Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to the Hardcore Metal Detecting Radio Show. I'm Derek Asklar. Mr. Craig Talley's on the line, and we have a special guest host, my wife Pauline, and we'll get started here tonight in just a second. Just want to tell you guys, if you have a question, comment, or topic you'd like to start up, we're going to kind of have open lines and then move on to another topic. You can call in at 352-504-4170. And or you can just hang out on chat, and you can ask questions there too. I'll be monitoring that a little bit closer than what I've been doing if I don't get enthralled with the conversation we're going to have tonight. We're actually, my wife is going to talk a little bit about some of her family history in this area and a lot of information I just thought was the coolest thing, Craig. And Pauline, you're still there, right?
Yeah, baby, I'm here.
All right. Craig, we kind of, me and Pauline were sitting there talking, and I was telling her about this spot we were hunting, or I was going to I had permission to hunt and everything, and she went through this whole story of her family and what they had over here, and it's in depth. It's very, very cool, I think. But we'll talk about that in just a few minutes here. But Craig, I saw some of those videos you put up of the sword, the plate. What do you call it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, I can't remember.
It's a
sash buckle.
It's a sash buckle.
Yeah, that's sash buckle.
Yeah, I found this, kind of close to where I found the breastplate, the breastplate skin, and that was down about 6 inches deep. And this thing was down, I don't know, probably 9 or 10 inches, and it was a soft signal, and it shouldn't have been because it's about the size of $50. It's the wreath of it, but anyway, it might have been on edge or something. But I had the 15-inch coil, and I really hadn't been able to use it in there because it was so thick. But I trimmed all the bushes and stuff, and was clearing a lot of that area out, but. And it's got like flowers like around the wreath, and in the middle there's a hole with 3 little things where the tongue slipped in and then locked in place. When you pulled, it would hold it together. And yeah. That's what got me at first. I didn't think it was as old as it was, but it turns out that I've seen them back as far as 1839. Yeah, well, no, yeah, this was worn on a 1 inch white, 1 inch to a ½ inch white, kind of like a cloth belt that you kind of tied around you, and this thing was like a decremental piece that went under your sword belt plate. So it wasn't, it's not, it's very thin, but it's not really bendable hardly. It's really solid. But the flower design around the edge, I was thinking, that didn't quite look right. But then I looked at other ones, and a lot of them had leaves around it, all kinds of different things, stars. And then the tongues are, I've seen different state seals like Virginia and Georgia and different things like that. And I've seen eagles, seen U.S., I've seen eagles with like an artillery. What else? All kinds of different designs. But I guy commented on my video, and he said that, I guess it was on Instagram, he said that he's been digging for probably longer than I have, and he'd found, I guess years ago in a Confederate camp in Richmond, he found the same thing, only his had a tongue with it, and the tongue was a U.S. Navy. So, yeah, I was hoping was hoping maybe I can find out somebody that's found that design, and if that design corresponded with another, with the, Pacific tongue. But that was pretty exciting, because I'd never really found anything, like that particular one. I found, I've gotten like, I think 27 accoutrement plates, but I've never found something like, that. But so I'm hoping the tongue is somewhere in the yard, but you never know. I wasn't expecting this find. It seems like almost like, I'm going, I'm not really finding anything, and I go out 3 or 4 days and just find iron because I'm, trying to, dig iffy signals that, just to see. And so anyway, I come up with that find. And so I started, just using the pinpointer, digging holes and just sticking a pinpointer in the ground and stuff. And that place is so junky, you can stick a pinpointer on the ground and actually pick up signals. And then there's signals down 2 feet deep. So something happened there. I almost think it was a garden or something at one time along there. It'd be perfect for it would get the really good afternoon sun from midday all the way, to the end of the day. Would get, really good sun, and, get sun there really good in the afternoon. So I don't know. The dirt is black. You can dig down 2 feet and it's still black. Other parts of the yard, you get down over, 9 inches or a foot, and it starts going into clay. But
Well, the
yeah,
black
but
is probably a rich loam dirt, like Craig said. It had been a garden area at some point, and through tilling it and turning it, the enrichment follows through and makes it a little deeper area. That's why it's so important to mend your gardens and keep using the same place year after year, if at all possible.
oh yeah. Yeah, I had a garden for, gosh, I don't know, 20 years, 25 years over my house over in Alexandria, and I used pretty much the same area. And I did really good on tomatoes and stuff there over the years.
Heck yeah.
Good. But I got kind of yeah, I didn't grow any this year, but it was weird. We didn't have hardly a spring, and then all of a sudden, it's like today from about 6 to about 6:45, just pounding rain and lightning and thunder. It's unbelievable how hard it rained. Now it's bright sunny out. It's crazy. We've been having all kinds of really hard rains. I mean, I was telling people, I said, I woke up and I thought I was in India. It's like we got a tin roof, and the water, bang, and then there's out in the back room, there's a skylight. You can always tell. You can hear this little tapping, all of a sudden. But this was like banging off the glass. Couldn't even see through it. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's more than fun, honey. I love listening to you and Craig talk about finds. But I think it was Mark Hoover that I was talking to one night when I was hosting the show about having did some hunting on another generation of my family's property that was a plantation owner and run cattle and kept slaves and things like that. And the most astounding thing I found was a shackle set where he would take the shackles off his slaves before they walked on his property because he wanted them to walk in a free man. So they couldn't step foot on their property until they were out of their chains. Now, Derek had been talking to a guy that owns a large parcel of property here behind us, and the gentleman was talking to him about him being able to go hunt around what they call a cabin.
Yeah.
The original part of it is quite old. By no means is it a cabin. It's a cracker shack. There's a big difference in a cabin and a cracker shack. You guys up north know what a cabin is. Cracker shacks have cracks in the floor so you can get a summer breeze. Your walls are not put together tightly. It's to breathe. It's to keep the elements off, and you learn to live with the skeeters.
They didn't have air conditioners back then, so they had to vent them.
Oh, exactly. And had really tall ceilings in the house where I think up north it was usually like an 8-foot, 10-foot ceiling top in a cabin.
Mm-hmm.
In that time frame where down here your ceilings were 14, 16 foot up, and you put windows at the top and the bottom so you could drop windows up top to get ventilation through the house,
mm-hmm.
To get the heat out from cooking and things like that. And in the wintertime, you crack the bottom windows just to get fresh air, but you could keep most of your heat on the upper portion of your house. It's a play on words, but that's just the definition of this area that he's going to be hunting is technically a cracker shack, not a cabin.
I went inside of it. Will invited me in. He's the land keeper or whatever, the watcher of the property or whatever, and he's actually staying in there because they're renovating it, trying to fix it all back up again. And I went inside, and he was telling me, he knew that the one side of the I'm just going to call it Cracker Shack, but I mean the one side is 65 years old. He knows that, but the other side he was saying like 125 plus years, and that side there has they're not quite 14-foot ceilings, but they're really tall. For the size of the house, and they actually have the top, and Pauline, I don't know what it's called. It fits on top of the gable of the roof. It's like an extension, but it's vented. Does that make sense? And that way the heat could go up, and they're actually redoing it. They had taken it out because it was rotting, because the chimney was falling into the house. So they dropped the chimney and then rebuilt the chimney properly, and that piece was up there about halfway down the peak of the roof, or along the peak of the roof, and they were putting that up there. But this, it was just like almost like walking back in time, because he hadn't done, other than the refrigerator and stuff that they've obviously put in there. It had what I think is original antlered chandelier kind of looking thing above the kitchen table. Yep. I probably should have gotten. I didn't want to be rude and take photos inside the house, you know what I mean? So I didn't. I probably should have, but I'm just kind of getting to know Will.
You'll discuss that later.
Yeah.
Take inside that house.
Right.
Not that house.
Yeah, and I'll let you guys get, because I think I muted my microphone. Pauline's talking about the place I'm going to be hunting that I got permission on. Actually, a property behind me. There's like 350 acres there, and there's like 450 by the river where this Cracker Shack and the old steel bridge that used to be there. It's obviously gone just pillars up there right now. But this property is about a mile or so in from the road that I come in off of, and there's not another house on that side for quite a bit of area. Now across the river there's homes, but this is a place that I've wanted to hunt. It's been on my bucket list forever. And Pauline's kind of talking about that, where, because they didn't even know where this bridge came from. They still don't. They thought, well, we don't know who built it. We don't know where it was financed. They thought it was like the Army Corps of Engineers and everything. We're going to get enlightened tonight, because I just got enlightened about 25 minutes ago when my wife told me where that bridge came from, and actually has it in her family Bible about it. But anyways, Pauline.
Well, in our 20-plus years together, you've never asked. I mean, I've been doing family research since I was probably 10, 12 years old. I'm that pesky little kid that will say, Grandma, who's this, and where did this come from, and who's that, and who's your mama,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the bridge that Derek's talking about, it was built by the railroad as a crossover for them to start getting supplies from the shallow side of the bank of what is the Withlacoochee River. They were trying to get everything to the east side, which was a very high, steep embankment that was just loaded with cypress. So it was a quicker, more cost-effective way to do it. Well, the property they were doing it on, they didn't quite get all the paperwork correctly. There was a forging of a signature and a whole lot of butthurt feelings. And it would have been my grandpa Joseph Wells.
And we're talking
His
about
dad, John Wells, went down. He and his friends took the daggum bridge apart, put it on a tug, went 5 miles upriver, and put it up on their property.
Okay, Pauline,
for them to run cattle across.
Hang on 1 second, though, so they understand. She's talking about you've heard me talk about Hog Island and the Burnout Bridge before. That's just like 5 miles away, like she said. And that's the bridge she's talking about now. Go ahead, Pauline. Sorry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, we're talking back in...
What, 18...
Late 1800s, 1880s, 1890s, in that area. They just took the bridge. They owned the property on both sides, like I said. Paperwork wasn't done correctly. Yeah, after they took the bridge, it took them about a year, but they figured out, yeah, they were in the right. And so they put up another bridge down there at Hog Island, but their original bridge ended up here by the Cracker Shack, where Derek's going to be metal detecting. And he never
Iron
asked,
Bridge, by the way, guys. Iron Bridge. Sorry, they're asking questions.
He didn't ever ask where the bridge come from. I've heard him mention he had gone back on topographical maps, found the little trail that the wagons used to take. It comes up behind our property. Well, you know what, guys? If you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get all the answers.
Yep.
So, now that he's asked, that is where the bridge come from. Now, as people wanted to cross that bridge, they had to pay a toll. It was his bridge. It was on his property, both sides. And if you wanted to get across that bridge, well, you had to pay a toll. And it was the old block-style drop that if anybody moved it, you would hear bells clanging or cans, whatever. Something made a racket, and he or my gran would come out there with a doggone gun and get their money. I mean, to us, it probably would have been like a $10 toll.
We're talking
But
18.
if you wanted to cross the bridge there, you paid, or you went 5 miles out of your way to Hog Island, which meant you had to come into town through the swamp, which was a very hard task. Or you went 11 miles the other way to the next bridge. So he kind of had the market cornered right there.
And what year was this, Paul? It was that, what, 1835, 1840, 1850, somewhere? It had to have been back a little ways anyways, obviously. I think it was, you mentioned...
Well, when he had his wooden bridge out there, that was back around 1817. That would have been Grandpa Smith.
Right.
That would have been a few generations back.
And this is your mother's side, right?
Right.
Okay.
All of this is on my mom's side generationally. When the bridge was moved, that would have been late 30s, early 40s, 1840s, somewhere around in there.
Yeah, I think you said 1842 or something like that. Something along those lines. I remember that. So, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Are the guys asking any questions?
Yeah, they were asking if it was iron or wood, and I told them it was iron, but I didn't realize, I forgot about the wooden bridge before that. Now they were just talking about the silver coins and stuff be around there and stuff like that. But
oh my goodness, I had never even thought Derek would get permission on this property.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It blew my mind because
there's liable to be stash of coins buried in the ground too.
Knowing her family, oh yeah.
Well, now you guys have heard me talk about my Creole grandmother.
Yeah.
The house that he is detecting, my Creole granny was born in that house. And the French influence on her side of the family, there was gypsy, fortune teller, whatever you want to call them. And there's plenty of references in the Bible of stinky money. And the reason it was called stinky money is they would wrap it in cloth and put it in something and bury it. And from the muck and the
humidity,
crap, it would start to smell.
And they still talk about that money today. People still mention stinky money.
Yeah, the old-timers still mention stinky money because that's what a lot of the old-timers did. They buried their money. They didn't keep it because it was a very rough area here. I mean, between the cattle rustlers and just the
Indians,
hooligans.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody always stayed at a homestead for fear of being robbed, for people just coming in and taking everything. So they hid valuables. So there's a great possibility he will come across a, what do you guys call it, a coin cache or whatever.
Cache of coins, yeah.
Cache of coins.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, by the bridge used to be a flat, and there's references in my grandma Sarah's Bibles about the kids learning to swim at the bridge flat. It was kind of like a beach area where part of it had caved in and it made a shallow spot.
Pauline, it's still there. That is still there because I just saw that and I was wondering what that was. It's about 25 to 30 feet away from the bridge. It's definitely a big cut.
Right. It was where the kids could swim, where laundry could be done. people traveling or whatever, that was what that area was for, and it was called the Flats. So there's no telling what you'll find out there in that area. See, for me, I won't hunt that property because of personal family beliefs. Just like I don't ever want you to hunt the slave plantation. It's personal. It's, for me, it's my heritage. It's a very sad part of my heritage because my grandpa was trying to do something good and was burned out of his home 7 times by other plantation owners because he didn't treat his slaves like animals. He treated them like humans.
Yeah.
He allowed them their freedoms. He would let them mill timber off his property on Saturdays. No one was allowed to work until after lunch on Sundays, and then they could work on building their own shacks and things for their families. And every time his house got burnt down, it was built back within a matter of a couple weeks because every one of them stopped what they were doing to fix it. They understood why he was getting flack from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a me and you thing. You can have the bridge, just stay off the cemetery.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. I didn't see that. I don't even know where it is out there, so maybe, hopefully I don't run into it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. It stuck in my head was that, like the Creole side and how that influence came into the area, because your family, there's so many intricate places where everybody was from, not only from your mother's side, but your father's side. They're from, Seminole Indian and Russian and Alaskan and Dutch and, from all parts of the country, really. From back then, traveling was, well, quite honestly, you may not make it. We're talking, 1700s, 1800s.
Maybe this explain to you why I don't like staying in one place forever?
Yeah.
And you had to bring me back to Florida.
Yep. Hey, I love the area. But, when you were telling me about your, I don't know, it's great-great-great-grandmother that was the orphan? Or is that the three or four greats? We'll just say that. I know that.
Well, that would have been back to Ruth McKinley. She was an orphan in the French-populated Gulf region, what is now Louisiana, Baton Rouge area, up in the Low Swamp. Mm-hmm. And she was one of 12 kids in an orphanage, and they weren't, I don't know how to say it, they weren't mentally challenged to the degree of
they were functional.
Yes, but
functional.
They weren't quite right.
Yeah.
And instead of killing them, people took them to an orphanage. This orphanage, this family, I guess, took in what we nowadays would call special needs children. And there was 12 of them, and in a storm, they lost their home. And they packed up the 12 kids, everything they could get on their wagon, and came east. And ended up in the Central Florida area. McKinley was the name of the people who took her in. So I have no way of knowing what her actual name was. That's as far back as I can go
on that
my
one.
Mom's side.
How old was she? About 7 or 8, or did it say?
She was 9. She had celebrated her 9th birthday, well, what they called her 9th birthday, on their way into Florida, what is now Florida. And there's, her Bible is the oldest one I have, and she was taught by this McKinley family to never take anything for granted and write down your blessings. That was how, I guess, hereditarily in my family, writing in Bibles, in the ledgers of the Bible, came to pass. I mean, I still do it. Our daughter does it. It's something we've passed on from generation to generation to count your blessings and give your burdens, hand them over to God, and things will be taken care of.
Right. They, you know, when she came over here, then, and they settled, or was she obviously given to a family, or did they raise her under that name, or was she adopted, or
adopted? The orphanage family, when they came out of the Bayou area, they raised those 12 children as their own.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. Now, according to the Bible, the oldest child that was traveling with them was like 17, and the youngest was 3. So there was a grand range for the 12 children. As well, to not be politically incorrect, as long as they were all the same complexion, they probably could have passed for these people's kids back then.
Right.
I mean,
and
you never know. You don't have photos or anything to compare it to, but...
And, well, you know, too, we have to understand, too, back then, I mean, we're also, you know, disclaimer, whatever you want to call it, a lot of the terms that Pauline will use or in describing this is what they, you know, they did back then. This was life. This was, you know, they had slaves. They had, you know, this was true South. So, you know, you were talking about being, you know, politically correct or whatever. You know, you can't be because of the era that you're talking about. You know, you can... It's just what it was. You know. So that's what people have to understand too. That it's not like it was nowadays. That's for sure. A whole lot of different way of living. So
we had frontier justice back then. You know.
Oh yeah.
There wasn't much law. You know. You had to provide your own.
Right. When my grandpa Joe and Laura's dad was Toby Cobb, when they ran cattle, they would go to the west edge of the property with like 60 cowboys, and they would just start herding scrub cows towards the stockyard. And whatever got mixed in was in.
Just profit.
That was just the way it was. It wasn't stealing somebody's cows. I mean, yeah, if you saw a brand on them, or if back then a lot of them would cut half the ear off of one side, they would call them out, but cattle was like air. If you took it in, it was yours.
Yep.
So.
And just all the you know, and not all of the stuff, you know, it was like I was telling Pauline, too, when she was telling me this, you know, it was just interesting because it's not all dark or anything like that. You know, it's just a regular family, but the stuff that they did to survive, because you have to remember, too, you're dealing with 2 Seminole Indian wars also, you know, not to mention, you know, the War of 1812. I don't know if that ever, you know, had any play.
Those wars were very close to the property.
Right.
That's how there were quite a few Seminole Indians that hid out, ran, whatever you want to call it, and they lived amongst the black slaves, and they helped hide them from the soldiers.
And we talk about the, you know, when I found I didn't find it. I mean, it was obviously there over by I-75, the small cemetery right there, is that, there's two soldiers there from the Indian Wars. I mean, there's no date, there's no date of birth and death or anything like that, but there's also Civil War Confederate soldier buried there. And I think there might be a Union soldier there also. And that's not your grandfather, your great whatever. They owned most of Sumter County, didn't they? And part of Hernando and Citrus, didn't they?
Yep.
They're right in that area. So we're talking, this was all. Everyone.
And people would come. There's references in the Bible where, and it's funny because the land wasn't really plotted. Mm-hmm. It would be like a guesstimate of,
where,
say, approximately 5 miles at such and such tree, so much feet by so much feet was given to a family for a private cemetery, because way back then there was one church, and you had to go all the way to Wildwood to the church. I mean, people would meet themselves, but it wasn't like up north where a church had all this endowment and property and you were buried in the church cemetery. I mean, that really didn't start happening down here until mid-1800s. 1860, somewhere around there.
Yeah, because that's
You're not going to find massively old cemeteries down here.
Come to think of it, too, Pauline, the First Baptist Church of Bushnell, the original church was built in 1854. We actually have record of that, but there's not a cemetery. The first cemetery really you come to is Tempe. Oh, there's this. Yeah.
And it was centrally located between 6 communities.
Right.
And everybody was brought there or put on their own property with a little marker that over time
disappeared.
Rotted away, got knocked over, got flooded out, whatever. So there's like in the Old West, there's a lot of people buried where they fell.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily in cemeteries, graveyards, whatever you want to call them. So that's why where that little cemetery is there by I-75, you'll see little plots like that all around here.
Well, there's one.
It was like an incident happened to where 10 people got killed at the same time, and they would bury them all together. Or a family would have a certain plot, and everybody would be buried together. But as far as the huge cemeteries, like the one we saw there in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that thing was
going
huge.
Into Weirden.
Yeah.
That thing was what, from the early 1730s, 1740s?
I don't even know. I know it's plenty
it might
old.
Have been earlier than that.
Yeah, this thing rolls over the hills, buddy. It's huge.
It's just so breathtaking. I mean, for me, it's a spiritual thing. It is so wonderful to see people communitively laid to rest.
Yeah, the only other cemetery I can think of, Pauline, that was probably at the same time too, other than Tema, and that's about 2 miles outside of Bushnell, north on over there, north of Bushnell, but is Pinola, is right there along the old Orange Belt Railway, where the bike path is now. If you go up through there, it's right off of, I guess you could call it Instachata Road, and that's the other older cemetery. There's also a Baptist Church of Instachata there also that use that cemetery. It's quite old.
They became the keepers of that cemetery and enlarged it and incorporated their cemetery with that.
Right. Just a
but
ton.
That's where there's a lot of when the original rail was coming through, there's like, I think it's 32 rail workers that were buried there. That's how that cemetery started, was by the railroad,
And see,
laying their workers to rest together.
you know, the interesting part about this is that every bit of information that I found and everybody that I've asked over there, like in Chattel Library, when that was still open, and I talked, and I found that, and I need to find that paperwork for the guy because the landowner actually wants to see those photos I found of, and they tore it down in 1961, I believe. That it's dated. The photo is actually a Xerox copy of the photo that they had in the I'm going to call it a book because a lady typed this thing out and everything, and then it never got bound, it never got published, but it had photos in there of the riverboats that they used, almost like a barge kind of thing. They had picture of the bridge and people on the bridge, and it was just wasn't fancy, but it had sides on it and everything. But I mean, it was really wide, is what it seems like in the photo, and that's where they would run the cattle through. That's why they needed it to begin with. But that is the only photo I found anywhere. They actually did a newspaper article. Somebody did, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and said, oh, yeah, this is where the pillars are. We don't know who built the bridge, but it was built and it was torn down around 1900. And that's what he had put in his newspaper. And I found different right off the bat. You know, when I found that paper, obviously it's a photo, and it's it's dated and everything else. In 1961 is when the bridge was actually supposedly torn down, but the landowner, they think that the bridge was actually torn down and the iron was thrown right into the river or dropped right, how are you going to get those big beams off there? And he wants to actually possibly try to salvage it maybe somehow eventually, not anytime soon, but it's probably still down there. We're talking what do you call it? The rivets, the old steel, they heat them up, put them through, beat them into place. That's what that's what I'm seeing on there's one pole or pillar that's about, I don't know, 12 to 15 foot tall. And it still has part of what I'd call a C channel or an I-beam at the top of it. We've never seen it before because it's all covered in brush now. You can see the small ones on the other side. I put a photo of that up on Facebook. I mean, when Pauline said that, I was like, what? You knew this? And she goes, well, yeah, I knew it. I've known it forever. You just never asked me. So, I had no clue, but nobody else really does either. So
my fear is people will think my family is weird.
Your family was surviving. I mean, no, when you think about it, back then you did what you had to do. I mean, it was not run down to the Circle K and pick up a gallon of milk. I mean, it was a different world.
You went out and pulled tips for 45 minutes to get that gallon.
Yeah. But it's frontier life. I mean, it's essentially frontier life. I mean, it just, you did what you had to do. I mean, there was wars going on, Indian wars going on, and everything else. So, yeah. And this is not to mention that around this house, this cracker shop, I was going to call it a house, but it has the old, I call them Sumter County rocks, the limestone rock, these big, huge boulders. Probably some of them they have to weigh 20,000 pounds. I mean, these are big, big boulders, but this area, the way it comes up off out of the river, they actually hunt for arrowheads and stuff out in the fields, when they do disc them and stuff like that, and they find shards, they find arrowheads and all kinds of stone tools. So this property is right by the water. It was used by, Indians and whomever else, but there's got to be a ton of history there. I mean, with the stagecoach run that would come off of his property, I only can hunt this property on essentially right now, probably on Sundays, when the landlord or the maintenance guy, whatever you want to call him, I guess he's the caretaker of the property, is there, obviously. But the landowner, he has been just wanting information like crazy. I said, well, heck, I guess I'm just going to have to bring Pauline over there because he's clueless. He's had this property for 25 or 30 years. He's a quiet person. He doesn't, and that's probably why I've never been able to get permission. He's very, keeps to himself. him and his wife, and they use this property on the weekends and stuff like that. He has cattle on it, and a lot of these properties around here that he owns. But he's had it for about 25 or 30 years. But prior to that, he's really interested. I mean, he's like freaked out when he heard that I had photos of something, and this bridge is not even 50 feet from the house. I mean, it's pretty close, and that downward, the beach area, Pauline, Will and I were actually talking about it. I said, do you think that's erosion or whatever? Because it's a definite indentation in the river, and the bank the way it is. You just pictured when you mentioned that flat area. I'm like, that's the only flat area along through there. So that was pretty cool. I didn't even realize what I was looking at. That's where sight reading in Florida is very hard. But she gave me tonight gave me a reference point. Of course, I have the bridge, where the house is, where this flat area is, and then I even found an old swing that's about a wooden swing. It's obviously not period, but it is extremely old to the point where you can probably grab it and crush it in your hands. And it's ornate. I'll have to get a photo of it. It's really neat, but it's about 25 foot the other way down towards the river. And you could tell where it was into the cypress tree where they had it anchored, so it would swing. But it looks like really old eye bolt kind of, like it was blacksmithed. It wasn't something they bought. It was something that was beat, maybe the swing wasn't original, but that anchoring system was, because the tree had grown around most of that eye bolt. And I'll have to get a photo of that. So, I mean, those cypress grow pretty slow. And they're pretty hardy. I mean, they're not going to fall over because of the kind of tree they are. So I just thought that was really neat that I can actually have a reference point now. And, I was seeing stuff along the roadway. This field, I call it a field. It's not real high grass. It's more of that hay seed, Pauline, that like we get in our yard. It's very low, but it has these strands where the seeds come up. But there's not as many palmetto bushes as you would think. It's mostly, it looks like a pasture field with trees in it, every so often. But it's low enough you could swing a coil and not have to fight it.
Yeah.
And that's from the time I get off of where the blacktop ends, so to speak. You actually have to go through a gate, and I followed him down through there. And I think it was about a mile back in there. But he owns property north of there, too. This is a huge, I could hunt this place 20 years and not hit everything. I mean, it's just so huge. But
north of where that bridge is, if you go up about 2 miles, that is where John Smith's homestead was. And he was a blacksmith. He was very skilled at what he did.
So he might have very well built that bridge, or rebuilt it, whatever. When he put it together, he had to put the rivets in. He had to do a lot of that work then, I would think, right?
Yeah, for the law back then, he made the shackles that you would put on, and they would hold their foot up on an anvil and heat a peg and put it in it and pound it, and that's how you transported them, or their arms, whatever. But he also made ornate signs. He did saddle work. He did horseshoeing. I mean, he fixed wagons, all that stuff. So, I don't know how far this gentleman's property goes up. But like I said, about 2 miles north up the river, you'll find an area of an old blacksmith. So.
Yeah,
it blows my mind that, we've never talked about this. Like I told you the other night, there's enough drama in my family with the last 2 generations. My God.
Yeah.
Going back this many?
It's funny because, we joke in our family about every one of her sisters married. I'm not being nice, but married guys. Like one of my brother-in-laws from New York, one of them's from Texas. I'm from Pennsylvania. They married way outside of they all married Yankee boys. in order to make sure, because the family is so big. I mean, it's everybody's kind of, and that weighs on in a way back then it was normal, but you have so many different family names, but they're all not real. Well, I guess they are related. I mean, you have what, rights
around here. If you meet somebody that's from around here,
Mhm.
they're part of the Wells or the Webbs somehow.
or the rights
and
too.
I
Yeah.
never wanted to have a third eye child.
No, that's not good. But yeah, the names, and we've met, of course, people that are from here and everything else, get to talking to them, and Pauline finds out, oh yeah, your grandmother was whatever, and that's my grandmother, and it's kind of neat to hear the two of them talk, because you get the other perspective of that other person's family, and yeah, it's just like any family. There's drama and stuff, but the history of the families is just it's really cool to me to hear that, because like Mark. Oh, good.
For me, like I said, I started doing my family tree years ago as a nosy child. Did it for a class project. Got so into it that it's kind of like been a lifelong thing, and I keep very good records of the current generations as much as I can, because nowadays people really spread out. They sprawl everywhere, live all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's something that's really starting to be missing with our younger generations, is there's almost like no concern for their heritage. I'm here, the world needs to do what I want it to do, and things need to happen when I want it to happen kind of scenario. And Derek, I've told you since we first got together, I was born 150 years too late.
Yeah.
I have such an old soul, but I find it very heartwarming at the same time.
Well, just the traditions in your family, the good and
they were passed down. They were important to be passed down.
The interesting thing, we talked a little bit about this before the show, was that the Southern Baptist religion is that was here, but when you brought the Creole side, which was also, wasn't that, you mentioned something about being Baptist, but also have
I'm
going to call it voodoo, but it's the Creole side.
The family were all true Southern Baptists, but they did believe in the hierarchy of the Creole beliefs. I mean, a lot of people call it voodoo, whatever. It's not all dark.
Yeah.
Christianity is not all light.
Yeah.
I mean, that's reality.
Well, you can't have one without the other.
The beliefs and the traditions were talked about over shell and peas on the front porch, and the granddaughters always did it. How many times have you seen our daughter, me, and my mom sit down on the front porch, shell peas, do something, and talk about history?
Well, I can remember you and Gladys and Mom and you and Bethany and Lori Beth and all of y'all, and when I come out there, or your dad would come, nope, we're talking, and
that's right.
And it
was because in our family heritage, that was the woman's place to carry it on.
Mm-hmm.
It always has been. It was the woman's place to save the family's soul and get them right with God. Men did the work. They were gods. They were kings. They were treated with the utmost respect. Children were seen and not heard. And not that I'm saying it was all correct, but if you get back to the hierarchy of a family, and I'm not blaming this on our younger generation, this is part of our generation and the one before us problem, because we allowed it to start slipping away. And reality is family is family.
Mm-hmm.
And you always have stages in a family. You have top dog, and well, I'm the youngest of 13. I was always the runt. I was the bottom dog. Shit always rolled downhill to me.
Bleep.
But sorry, but somewhere in our society, we forgot that in order to get respect from people, you have to give respect. How can you expect anyone else to fully, unconditionally love you if you can't be honest with yourself and love yourself?
Yeah.
It's just the way we were brought up. I by no means am I ashamed of anything my ancestors did.
Yeah.
I wasn't the one who did it. And still, on a daily basis, I pray for the souls of my ancestors that have gone before me, for the not-so-right stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it.
Well, your family,
My
too,
heritage.
I've seen, and you've said it the best, yes, you guys will, in every generation, they would fight like cats and dogs. But when it came right down to it, don't let somebody from outside of the family mess with a family member. That's been the same for 200
hell
years
no, that's
with your
the easiest
family.
way to fill up some county jail.
Yeah. And, this is, their family is tight when it comes when it comes to somebody from outside of the family doing somebody wrong in the family. Oh my goodness. I know the stories your dad used to tell me from back when he was a kid. And you have to say this is a different side of the family, but his grandfather or great grandfather owned great
grandfather owned Santa Ana Maria Island.
Yeah, and that's where all the to-dos go to the beach and all the fancy shops, and that was all owned by your dad's father or great grandfather. Sorry.
Yep.
But the amount of land and what went on the land and stuff like that. But they always, I don't know. Your dad logged when he was 8 years old. He was out there logging, with a team of horses and.
Oh yeah.
I can remember a story.
He was logging, and come dark 30, he was on a damn little rowboat going over to the Sawgrass Islands because that's where the stills were.
Mm-hmm.
He would bring shine back. His older brothers would run it.
Yep.
It was their lifestyle.
I think he told me a story, and this is kind of not really off topic, but he told me a story of when he was younger. They had a boat. It was a rowboat, but they had gotten some kind of a motor for it. I don't know if they even.
Yeah.
It was probably, your dad was born in 29. And it was when he was about 12 or 13 years old. I think something like that. But he took the trip, he was going to go out and check, I don't know whether it was crab traps or what he was checking out there. But his engine went out, or his motor went out, and he was out in the Gulf. And he was out there, I think he said, for 4 days.
Yeah.
And ended up finally somebody found him or come to shore. But at that time, and being that young and in that kind of environment, I don't know, that's, with the storms the way they kick up out there, just the plain heat, and him surviving that at that age, I thought that was, that was just regular.
That story is actually in Grandma Nina's Bible, because the first day he didn't come back, she thought he was out cutting the fool, doing things he shouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm.
Second day he didn't come back, she was ready to beat his butt.
Third day
he didn't come back, she started praying to God that he didn't suffer.
Yeah.
And the fourth day they found him.
It just, and he comes from a hard line of family. I mean, Seminole Indian and everything else, because this, I guess his great-grandfather was the one who married a Seminole Indian woman, right? Or is that the generation before it?
generation before that.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother,
Yeah, that's a whole nother 20-hour show there.
Yeah.
I got that grandma in a card game. They were out of money, and a guy put up a mule, and the Indian put up his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up with a wife.
Yeah, but it's a look back on the way things were back then. I mean, they don't teach history anymore. They don't, you see it in movies and stuff, but movies are movies. This was real
When was the
life.
last time one of our children came home from school and talked about the Holocaust?
Right.
I mean, let's be serious.
Yeah, they don't talk about anything
that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They don't teach the Revolutionary
Well, it's like we were
War
talking
anymore.
about the other day. It's social studies. It's not history anymore.
Right.
Exactly, it's not. So if we don't teach our kids through our family trees, how are they going to know the truth?
Mm-hmm. And it just, like with Bethany too. I mean, even I can see a difference in the way that her generation, even knowing this, Bethany holds on to a lot of the values, but it's in a different way than you and your sisters or your mom. It's just different. Even Lori's the same way. They have a different society that's changed in the environment.
Society is exactly it.
Yeah.
I mean, and yes, I talk about the women in my family being subservient,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I both know I am not.
My wife is a force of nature, and anybody who's ever met her will say the same thing.
But prior to my ex-husband, he was extremely abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I took a big girl biatch pill and just tore him up, and I refused to ever be controlled by anyone again.
Yeah.
I love being your partner. I love that you're my husband, but we both know we are together because we want to be. We are not necessity. And we made sure of that when we first got together. We didn't need each other financially. We liked each other being there emotionally, but we could survive without one another.
Mm-hmm.
You are the best luxury in life that I could ever dream of, wish for, want, and have acquired.
I also know that you told me one time when we first met, she goes, she was talking about some of her, past bad experiences, and she goes, I learned a long time ago that you do have to sleep sometime, and the third and fourth rib screwdriver, 45-degree angle, can take care of my problems. So I took that to heart.
Yep. And now that I'm older, I don't have the strength to go through all that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just shoot you.
We talk about the stuff. Polly, there's a lot of stories, and I hear, just not only from me, I've heard this for years. Even Pastor Billy would tell stories because his family's from here for many, many years. His ancestors or whatever, and they talk a lot about, or he mentioned a lot about, the stinky money, and then there's a couple other people in town here, old timers, and we're talking almost 90, anyways, 90, 95 years old, would talk about how different it was in this area, and even in the before Vietnam, and we'll say in the 50s, how it was rough here. I mean, it was not, most people think Florida, palm trees and sand and bikinis and beer. Yeah, when you get into, that was not the way it was.
We were the thuglet hideout in the 30s and 40s, for goodness sake.
Yeah,
if you committed a crime somewhere else in the country, you ran to Florida.
I think they still do that.
Place to hide.
I always hear this. Me and Pauline laugh every time we hear we don't laugh. It's sarcastic laugh that, there will be a big crime somewhere like in Miami or Orlando, whatever, and so from New York or from Michigan or for whatever that moved here is the one that committed it. Pauline says, "Yep, another one came down to Florida." Oh gosh, it makes me laugh when I hear it because it's kind of ironic. It's always been like that, renegades,
But
rebels, and rogues, or whatever how they call
let's
it.
back up for a minute to that property down there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure which machine you're going to use. If you go down with mine,
Mm-hmm.
I would say start that 11-inch coil on. Start at probably 40 foot back from the bank. Work toward the bank. Now, when it comes to getting down at the water, of course, go to the other machine. Notice I'm being politically correct and not naming names.
Well, you can name names if you want.
Go to the water machine, and I would start deep on that flat first, because you have to remember that river runs north, and it used to be a lot more swift. It's not that our banks have gotten shorter. The silt coming from the south of the major metropolises that have been building up over the years has made the river more shallow.
Yeah, because the river used to be, I have watermarks right, just not even down by the River Rats restaurant there on that bridge, put it 12 to 15 feet higher than the water level now, and these are old watermarks. So I know that river had to have been up to our road, close to it. Anyways, at some time in our,
Goodness, yes.
it had to have been like a
Goodness,
raging,
yes.
not a raging river, but it was bigger than the Hillsborough, or about as big as the
It was
Hillsborough
half
River.
the size of the Mississippi.
Yeah, it was a pretty big
It was
area.
half the width of the Mississippi. It was huge, very fast moving. No one had started pumping water. There are 17 springs south of here that fed this river. So when you start taking all of that into consideration, it might be a good time for you to think about a wetsuit.
Yeah, but I got to do that in the winter time though. That's the only problem.
Well, whatever it takes. I mean, if you're serious about hunting the property,
Oh yeah.
which that's what I did over at the plantation. I started in 40, 50 feet from what I thought, what it had told me description-wise in the Bible, and I worked into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started finding the pins right off the bat. And when I came across that first set of shackles, I mean, it was so emotional. I had to stop and I came home.
Well, I could see where it would be like that too, because even when I was over there, because Will went and started working on whatever he was working on for the house there, and just walking around in there, it's not I don't know, it's an easy feeling, not a bad one, not a.
Yeah, it's not dark feeling at all.
But you can feel, I mean, what I know to be the feeling of an area. It was a very peaceful, but you could tell the activity there. You can kind of look and understand, because the landowner had changed a couple things of the environment, especially right in front of the house. In Pauline, you've seen the photos where he built that dirt wall, that land wall right through there, and that was because all that water was coming down and running alongside of the house and the bridge into the river, and it was a runoff. When we had a lot of big storms and stuff, that's what it would do. But he didn't want it washing the foundation of the house, because over the years it eroded out towards the house. So he packed that in. It's about I want to say about 12-foot wide wall. It's not a wall, but it's piled up dirt or whatever that runs right through there, and it's been there for years. But and I was looking at that and seeing where the next level up is, because it's almost tiered right through there. Where the river could have been was probably right up. You probably could walk out the back porch to that place, because it does have a porch on it, and the dock. They actually have a dock going down to the actual dock going out into the water. Alongside of the bridge, just a little bit. It's not like real far out there, but it's really nice. But you can see, if you look down to the right or left along the river, where the flat areas are and where they was steep at. and I know you mentioned your nanny was allowed to stay there or something like that. Or no, your nanny's
Yeah.
mother. I can't remember. But did they have more stuff out there? Did they have other homes? Do you know of?
Yeah, there used to be like little shanties, one-roomers
Right.
that travelers could stay in, waiting for the boats to come through.
Right.
It wasn't like a old Western motel or anything like that. This is basically a slop to keep you out of the sun or the rain or whatever. It was
Yeah.
probably like a jail cell size, 8 by 10, somewhere to have a little privacy.
Well, even
Throw a pallet down and get some rest.
yeah, because I was thinking, they have a
'Cause,
outhouse there, but I mean, obviously they built that whatever in the last 10, 15 years or whatever, just because. But the privies where they would plant their garden, where they would, I mean, all these little areas that a homestead would have back then, because they had to be self-sufficient, and all the little activities that would go on, and the blacksmithing and all that. I mean, there has to be other areas right there that they don't even, that the landowner has no idea about. And that's, that was one thing that in talking with Will, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say there's a description in Grandma Bernice's Bible of a plum grove. Somehow they had gotten what we know as the Japanese plum trees, and there was a plum grove that they used to picnic under. Travelers, she would make lunch and serve it to the travelers under the plum grove, and they could hear people laughing from the picnic area there at the house.
So it couldn't.
I don't know if it's still there. Those trees usually don't live that long, but yeah, there was a social area there as well.
Was there any on these because I don't know a lot about Chinese plums. I mean, we have one of those trees you got. They're very slow growers. You told me that.
But they don't live long like an oak or a pine or a maple.
I wonder do you think the seeds could survive? How peach seed will be there for God, peach seeds seem to last forever. Or, like walnuts, hickory nuts.
There could be more of the Japanese plums there. Remember in Zephyr Hills, the neighbor had one to start with?
Yeah.
And within 4 years, he had 80 starting around it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, over the years, they may have chopped them down. They could have mowed over it because they're a pain in the butt when it comes to cows.
Right.
But just, you never know. But I just thought of that in Grandma Bernice's. She was very, very articulate, and she was afforded a ladies' education. She could read and write very well, and her Bible proves it. There's a whole, it was like a weekly thing for her to catch the world up with what was going on in the world according to Bernice. That's my mom's grandma. That
is that Macy?
My mom, you would know.
No, sorry.
Macy is my grandma. Her mother was Bernice.
Okay.
And you would hear my mom make references to the snootiness of Bernice, how she was always prissy and sassy. It was because she was the only one of the children that was afforded an education. And
that was a big deal.
She was better than everybody.
That was a big deal back then. I mean, kids and even our generation take education for granted. Back then, it was a luxury. You didn't, not everybody got educated, obviously. Reading and writing and went through school. I mean, your great-great-grandmother, or more than that, the Seminole Indian girl that that he married, he sent her up north to finishing school, to
right.
to teach her to be a lady, to educate her the whole 9 yards. It wasn't.
And basically, that's kind of what happened with Bernice. She was betrothed at a young age to Thomas Webb,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted her to be educated.
Yep.
So, at a young age, she was sent to school.
It's funny how that goes in through time, though, through to the generations. Because I remember that you went through like a different kind of school, for speech and everything else. You were educated. Yeah, yes, you have a Pauline, the regular wife, and everything else, but then you have Pauline, the businesswoman, that knows all this and can run a business and everything else. And, you have that down, but not everybody gets that opportunity. I just thought that, because it seems like it's been going on, with certain people in the family over several generations.
Well, and I guess that was why I was so passionate about our daughter going to culinary school.
Yeah.
Because bless her heart, she can cook cracker.
Yeah.
But, honey, she couldn't do anything beyond that.
Right.
I mean, she had to learn how to cook for other than crackerism. She would have died at 40 of heart failure frying everything, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But when they, when
he needed that.
Yeah. But yeah, it just, with that property there, like you were saying, from working 40 or 50 feet from the pasture side back towards the house and the bridge and everything. You see, even the not the embankment, the ramp, the dirt ramp that went up onto the bridge. I mean, there's palmetto bushes there, stuff like that now, but it's definite. You can still see, and it's I don't know what it probably has gravel, or I don't know what they would have put there to harden up, maybe Sumter County rock, whatever. That path, it's still there, still noticeable, very definite. Even though it's overgrown, you can see and you can see where the pole is. The pillars are about the size of, I'm going to say, a 55-gallon drum as far as diameter. And and then you have the I-beam. You can see how high the I-beam was for the decking of the, or the support for the bridge itself. It was like a hump bridge or whatever. It wasn't straight across. You had to go up and then down, like a camel's back almost. But you can definitely see where that came off onto the ground right there. On the other side, now, I looked at it. Well, Pauline, you were with me the one day when we drove up Inchatah Road, and we went down the dead-end road, and that's where a dead end's at, is right there, by that property. But it's chopped off on the Inchatah side. It's just straight down. There's no bank that gradually comes down to the water, really. It was almost carved in there.
Yep, that's exactly what it was. Years ago, they came through and tried to clean up the bottom of the river. Well, when growth and development so miraculously happened south of us and started using up all the aquifers, the river lowered, the mobility of the river dramatically slowed down, so it's not moving as much north now.
Right.
And with the new laws of the Cypress, with the new laws of the Cypress and what you're allowed to do in the Withlacoochee, because it is considered a historic waterway, an act of God in Congress, couldn't get it cleaned out now.
Well,
and that's one thing Swiftmud doesn't want to happen. They're a big powerhouse in Florida when it comes to water rights.
Right.
You start cleaning it out, you're going to uncover a bunch of the springs. They're going to lose their southern ability of water. So, of course, they don't want it touched.
I was listening, I do karaoke and all that stuff, obviously, but, the song Seminole Wind by John Anderson, they talk about draining the glades and in the name of flood control. Well, that happened up here with Jumper Creek. The Army Corps of Engineers came in there and trenched it all out to drain the properties, which caused a lot of problems in this area, really, because Center Hill is right outside of our town, and it used to be the pepper capital of the country, and
Yep.
beans, and the Orange Belt Railway had spurs that went up through there. I actually found seals, lead seals, metal detecting from all the towns, even towns that aren't there anymore. Were on, that are ghost towns now, were stamped. One side was where it was leaving from. The other side is where it was going to, on that seal. That's where the reason why me and Tony would wanted to find them, because it was reference to, history, where it went, and everything else.
Yeah, the Orange Belt.
Right, but they drained off so much around here that it now, we get flooded out here, but not anywhere near. But they couldn't build. But that's one of the problems down with Ridge Manor, which is south of us, and part of the Withlacoochee runs down through that way. They get flooded. They built dams, obviously, so they could build houses down there. Well, when we had the hurricane last year, they opened up the dams, and it brought the water up. It still wasn't up as high as it was 100 years ago, but it was pretty well up there. But that's what what they did in Florida. They essentially wanted to make it inhabitable. Probably, for me and Pauline, it's way too much, and has been way too much for many years now. As far as what they're building, and they had this rule for a while. I don't know if they still do it or not. If you want to build a housing addition and there's a swamp there, well, you just fill it in and you open up a swamp somewhere else, a water refuge, whatever. Well, Mother Nature, she doesn't conform to us. She's
gonna keep waiting for her to give us our comeuppance.
Yeah, she's gonna take back. Mother Nature's like this. She wants a swamp to be somewhere. It's going to be somewhere. It may wash out everybody, but it's happened in many places, and that's one of the reasons too we're having a problem with these sinkholes everywhere. Like in Holiday, Florida, I think they still are constantly. You'll see a drills. They're filling them with concrete or something like that. I don't know what they fill them with exactly, but one of my best friends, that's what he does for a living. He's actually a rigger and works for the company that fills these sinkholes in. But that's because we've drained so much water out of here to pump to Clearwater, St. Pete, wherever it goes to.
Yeah,
Even
we're putting all these voids in
like Land O'Lakes, when I was working for the rodeo company, and I was there for Pauline, 6-7 years before we met.
Yeah.
But there was water there. We actually had streams and everything else. I watched that stuff dry up because of pumping so much water out of there. All the aquifers, I think they said 15. I'm not going to give a number, but we're way down on water even now because of the amount that we're pumping out. Even Sumter County, they're pumping so much water to the coastlines and stuff like that, and there's such a high population that a lot of stuff's getting uncovered. We're finding more and more stuff from, like the D-shackle I found, that 38-pound D-shackle. That was found, we'll say, 12 blocks from the river?
Yeah.
Something like that. This is obviously definitely from, it's a rig, a D-shackle rigging apparatus or whatever that I found. Matter of fact, you were with me that day. You're the one that filmed it.
Yeah.
And it shocked us because it was only like 2 or 3 inches in the ground. It wasn't, 2 foot or anything like that. It actually unmasked a lot of other little targets for me. But that was found right at the old fire department in Nobleton. So, that's probably, obviously if you're finding that kind of stuff, and I found chains and irons and everything else right in that area too, that river could have been, it could have been, I don't know, within 100 feet of that spot where it would run, 100 years ago or 150 years ago. And, so you just don't know where the river would spur, because the Withlacoochee rolls north, flows north. And you know how rivers, they decide where they're going to want to go. They're going to rip out a bank here and make a new path somewhere, over a long period of time. So, yeah, we very well, all that along through there was probably underwater, even the restaurant and everything, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
So it just is such a chance, not even a mile from here is where and Pauline, you were that day when that guy was talking about the Spanish armor. You know,
Oh, yeah.
he found
Yeah.
3 foot down in the ground, and you know, that was right in my area. So where people traveled to or through or whatever, this is a main throughway. This is the only bridge, with the exception of the bridge 5 miles down the road, that's not there anymore either. This was the 2 main bridges that connected all the counties, or connected this.
The 2 sides of the state.
Right, right. So the activity that's why I've always said, I know I'll come across it eventually. You know, it's just one of those things. And these little tidbits of history that, you know, that you helped me out with, because to be honest with you, and I told her this, I said, you know, you've talked a lot over the last 20 some years that we've been together, to a certain extent, different family members and what they did and everything, but I never put it together of just how much between both sides, because I was thinking about probably more about your dad's side of the family, because he would talk to me all the time back, you know.
Yeah, and he's from Santa Ana Maria Island, but the ancestry of him is back over to Bullfrog Creek, which is right near Sun City Center, which is further south in Florida.
And so, it's now a retirement community.
I'm cracker on both sides.
Yeah. You know, you guys talk about...
One half run cows, the other half run shine.
And just like you guys may see on the news and stuff, they start talking about the villages. That's actually,
the largest retirement community in the world.
Right, is up there in the villages. But Sun City is south of Tampa. And that area has built up. It's probably nowhere near what this is, but I mean, Sun City, Florida, that's where a lot of retirement homes and that kind of thing was built. I don't know. I was taking stuff down there for the concrete company.
Well, that's just it. It started filling up down there, so they keep moving north. Before you know it, we're not going to have an Ocala forest because it's going to be full of houses.
Yeah, even Bushnell. I mean, I've been telling them about every place that I would hunt, and Pauline see me just cringe every time I see a heavy equipment, because they've taken so many of the spots that I've hunted and had success on, they're gone. They are just literally paved over, or there's a building sitting on them, or whatever. But they've actually talked about the Bushnell city limits. They're wanting to expand them out farther to keep the villages from infiltrating too far down in here, because they're already in Lake Pan. And, you know, they're
already all the way down to Sumterville, which is east of us.
And it's nothing, you know, it's North County versus South County. It's the way it's always been. Even Wildwood, Wildwood's part of it, Leesburg, it just takes up its own town, essentially. But it's a retirement community, and, the big fancy houses and, you drive golf carts. They have their own golf cart roads. Yeah, I mean, they have more accidents with golf carts than they do with cars, to give you an example. But this is what the way they choose to live, and that's, everybody has a right to do that. But it's just encroaching on the historical part, I think. And I've seen them. I mean, I don't even know the area probably where they're putting the golf course in or whatever they're putting in over there. We saw it. They've actually took the road out right now. It's closed. I couldn't get through there. But that was, how many acres was that? A couple thousand acres?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 50, 60, 70 excavators and dump trucks. And I mean, they're just redoing the contour of the entire area. When they're out there with
D10s, they're serious.
And they're hauling dirt out and bringing dirt in. And where this dirt's going, I don't know. But, I mean, they're digging down to get
filling in swampland.
Yeah, essentially.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But anyways, we need to get off the politics.
Well, no, I didn't mean the politics part of it as far
aggravated.
as... Yeah, well, I wasn't meaning to get politics, but all the dirt they're moving is what I was talking about, really. Getting at is, where is that dirt?
You want to go play in their dirt. Well, and I keep telling you, if you will buy me a Bobcat, I will pick up all the dirt off of one half of our yard and move it to the other so you can go through it. And then I'll put it all back, and I'll dig up the other side of the yard and put it on top of what you've already gone through.
There you go. I just need to get that airboat.
Buy me a Bobcat.
All the guys here, they're saying here on chat that I definitely need an airboat. A subliminal message. And I'll drive it slow, I promise.
Get an airboat after I get a pontoon.
No, she wants a pontoon boat so we can be part of the pontoon club.
Redneck Club. Oh,
Shoot,
honey, are you okay?
I'm gonna freaking die. I think. I don't know. But
Anyways, but now, Craig, when we were starting off, you were talking about that buckle thing that you found.
the sash buckle.
Yeah, sash buckle.
Okay, and you had found something else near there, and you were looking for the tongue to match. I know on a lot of the historic military.
What it is it's a two-piece wreath and tongue
Right.
plate. So I found the wreath, and now I got to find the tongue to go with it.
Okay. Now, what I was going to say is, with some of the historical stuff that people have donated to our VFW post, the different design around it, how you said some said U.S. and it would have a group insignia, the floral and the stars of what I've seen had to do with really high rank. Have you looked into that possibility?
Most of those were usually some of it came out of the militia. That were, every state had to have militia, and they became like social clubs, and so they had their own uniforms, they had their own buttons a lot of times. Some of them would have the little thing I found. It's basically not something that it's kind of for show. It's decorative, and it went underneath the regular sword belt plate, and it just had like a cloth belt, so it really didn't hold anything. It's just for looks, basically, I guess. And you probably would find them in early war camps, most of them. I don't think it's something that a lot of people would wear out in the battlefield and stuff, but maybe early on. But
the things that have been turned into us were usually of a dress uniform type for dinners and welcoming.
That one you found, Pauline, or the one that you guys had that was donated, was actually a presidential. You only get it from the President of the United States. It was,
honey, it was Secret Service Presidential Guard brass is what it's called. It's not brass, but it's the stars that go on the collar,
right,
with wings of presidential duty. The one set that had the wings going off to one side that was colored was presidential duty on Air Force One. And then he had the button that went on his lapel for his dress uniform as presidential duty.
Yeah, that was just incredible to see those medals and stuff, because, I'd never seen them.
We definitely want to get a picture of those and put them up so people can see them if they're interested in them. Now, what I'm doing with them is the family didn't want them because I guess this guy had so much of this stuff.
Oh, huge amount. Huge amount.
His kids, grandkids got what they wanted. They took the rest of all his medals and everything and put it in a box. The sew-on patches for airborne and all this other hoopla that the guy had been in. He had all these patches for more uniforms. They were all brand new, still in their little packages. They brought us all this stuff, probably to the tune of 25 to 30 pounds.
At least.
Medals and buttons and insignias. It was just
he was highly decorated. highly decorated individual. Even his flight helmet, his helicopter flight helmet, they just, I guess it just had so much of this stuff that they just wanted to donate it. And we've actually, some of the stuff, obviously, the other members wanted and stuff like that. And just for the, I don't know,
the nostalgia.
Yeah,
of
it definitely. Matter of fact, one of the barmaids there, she, was it her father or whatever? He served foreign war, whatever. But the kids,
Pop.
she fell in love with that helmet. And actually, Craig, it had earphones in it and a microphone. It was for a helicopter pilot. I mean, he has, obviously flew a helicopter too, back before, getting with Air Force One and everything. It was just neat seeing all the stuff, all the traditional medals and everything, and none of them fakes. They're all real, and not.
Well, that's what her pops did, and he was shot down.
Yeah.
And most of his gear was taken.
Yeah.
So for her to have a decorated, actual in combat chopper helmet.
Yeah, that was rare.
To be able to give him, oh my God, he lost it, just the nostalgia of it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everything that anyone has, we did keep the enlisted gentleman's name tag in it. We didn't pull his name off of anything because, well, that's the proper thing to do.
Right.
Because you're honoring that person's service. But yeah, it's some of the stuff we acquired was like from the Persians, from Afghanistan.
Oh, even the
but
cavalry
it goes
stuff.
all the way back to Korea.
Yeah.
I mean, his service was a very elongated service.
Now you had some spurs in there, and I've got some of them. That was from the cavalry unit, obviously.
Yes, because he was part of a cavalry unit.
Yeah.
Originally.
And these look like they're, I have to look at those closer. Some of those look quite like, they were obviously military.
Oh yeah.
What it would,
but
historically.
You have to remember that stuff came from 3 generations of Beckers.
That's true. Yeah. So it very well could be historical in that aspect too. That's what I always look at. Pauline, people will donate stuff and stuff like that. Stuff that you don't want, they donate it to be at a yard sale, whatever, to generate money or whatever for the different things that we do for, the community and this and that, and for our veterans. So, when I'm looking at this stuff, hey, this is something that we need to keep, that we need to, we need to put in a display, or we need to, whatever. It's not something you're just going to, it has too much history to it. It's too much, there's too much to it.
Like the presidential set.
Yeah.
I've put fillers out to several military museums. Only one's gotten back to me so far, and I guess they had everything but the large button that goes on the dress uniform, and they did say, of course, we understand you probably don't want to break up a single soldier's set, but please keep us in mind, kind of thing. So,
well, we're getting to that point.
We're going to do everything we can to preserve it.
And, well, a lot of this stuff too, and Craig and I have talked about this on the show before, and this is where I was getting at with this. We hunt, relic hunters, they're obviously looking for Civil War items or whatever, but we're getting to that point now. You think about 1917, 1918 through the 20s, it's almost 100 years ago. So a lot of the World War I stuff is now what I would call relics, and people are going to, kids that are coming up, everybody wonders if there's going to be places for them to metal detect, there's stuff to find. I don't think we're going to run out of stuff. It's just going to be a different era of stuff. I mean, they're still finding Civil War stuff now, but 30, 40 years from now, they're obviously going to move on because the World War I stuff, the World War II stuff, this will all be, stuff that we want to save. We want to find this stuff so that, we can, not let it just go into the sands of time and just get destroyed. So that's where I was getting at with that. A lot of these metals and a lot of this stuff, it was really ornate in the 20s. I like a lot of that stuff. There's engravings in it and stuff like that. It just looks really cool. And then when you get after World War II, it becomes more mass-produced kind of stuff, where they're maybe not as fancy or not made of the same kind of materials. I find a lot of brass, decorated brass stuff, and jewelry. A lot of even the silver-plated rings, the gold-plated rings. I do find a lot of those. I found some slave rings. Pauline has too. But just being able to hunt and still know, and save that history, and have fun doing it. That's
Well, Derek, the one way I look at it is, before the Wide World Web, you would have had your items. You would have done catalog research to see what you could find out about it.
Mm-hmm.
As Craig would have done the same thing with the old buttons, trying to find out what the insignias on different ones are. For me, having these items and being able to catalog what they are and what era they are, and take pictures of them and file them,
mm-hmm.
It's like a future of ID Me.
Yeah.
It's something that generations from now, because we don't teach history the way we used to, as they find stuff, wow, what is that?
Right.
Kind of thing. I mean, and unfortunately, this is my doom and gloom side. As much as they do not teach history in school because of the censoring of history,
yeah,
how far are they really going to take that in our future? I don't mean 10 years from now. I mean 50, 80 years from now.
True.
How far is the censoring going to go?
Exactly. Yeah, it makes sense. Because it
yeah,
does.
I'm the downer on that.
Well, we've all said it at some time. We've lost so much. How do we stop? I had a teacher tell me if you're doomed to make the same mistakes if you don't know your history and what they did back then. If we don't learn from what the mistakes that we did in the past, how are we going to prevent it from happening in the future? And I think that's what in some ways, we've already done that. The morals, the way that we live.
So now we're back to making mistakes.
Yeah. And we're talking,
Hey,
oh, go ahead, Pauline. Sorry.
I was going to say, one of the girls at work, I mean, we have something that my lovely husband, every time we have moved, has packed up so generously and moved it and made sure it stayed really nice. And most kids do not know what they are these days, but it's a complete set of Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah, that's
now,
earlier.
There's a daughter of one of the girls at the post who's going into 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked me, Miss Pauline, do you know what an Encyclopedia Britannica is? I said, yes, I do. That used to be my internet.
Yeah.
She looked at me. She goes, well, I'm having trouble finding a lot of information on the War of 1812.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean? And so we went in the office. She pulled it up. She says, this is just run-of-the-mill stuff. How do I find the truth?
That's
and
scary.
Bless her heart, I dug them doggone encyclopedias out and took her the 2 books she needed.
Let me rewind you on that. Who got the encyclopedias? I had to dig them out. Then you took them to her.
Well, but anyways, she ended up with an A for her history report, and they were doing like a history fair. She ended up going to district, and when she won that and went to state, they give her a a ribbon for like effort or participation or whatever, and they made a note on her paper that though her information was correct, it needed to be written politically correct.
Yeah, that annoyed me a little bit.
And that just blew my mind. It's like, come on.
It's the way
Really?
things were. I mean, she, with the information she had, that was, you know, history changes.
They don't want our kids to talk about
Right.
it.
You
They
know,
don't want them to know these things.
you know, it's not
It
all.
comes down to everything. They started doing it back in the 60s when
Yep.
I was in school.
Yeah.
And it's only because I was interested in history that, you know, I always liked it. I thought it was kind of neat when we moved into our neighborhood, you know, where I, you know, previously lived, and there's a fort right in the field there, you know, and I thought, why is that there? You know, that's crazy. The actual Civil War, you know, outlines of it. And so...
We always had the.
You know, a lot of people, you know, I told people there's a fort right on this hill. Well, they didn't have any battles here. I said, no, this was, you know, they were protecting D.C. with this fort. There was a ring all around the whole place, and, you know, people don't even know that.
Well, it's even.
You know, there's trenches that run through people's yards. In fact, right across from where I used to dig at this church, where I found the Episcopal High School button and all kinds of coins, and it was just unbelievable. In fact, Justice Douglas owned the house. It was a Supreme Court justice that was there, and they tore the house down and put a $2 million home in place of it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, even,
and
you know.
nobody even knew who. I said, Justice Douglas lived there, and they go, who? And I said, God, you know, he was the famous, you know, Supreme Court justice. You know.
You know,
It really
Truman
makes
actually-
you wonder who's going to carry the torch of truth.
Yeah, that seems to be the big thing. Even on the internet, you don't. There's a lot of information there, but sorting through the, I'm just going to call it
But so
the.
much of
you know,
it is becoming tainted
saturated with.
because
You know,
of our modern standards. Can
Right.
you really believe what they're calling the truth anymore? Because they are rewriting history.
it's the warm and fuzzy side of the world, I guess you could say. The
Well,
sunshine
you know
and
what? All
rainbows.
them bears
They
need
don't
to be
really.
changed.
They're not really. They're kind of a race in history, or making it
Yeah.
so you don't want to hear about it. You know, it's. You know, there's a lot of, you know, stuff that's still, you know, even in the older books, some of the stuff wasn't exactly true.
Yeah.
There's always politics, and there's always different ways of looking at stuff.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
And, you know, politics is probably the worst thing there is. You know.
Oh, exactly.
It gets in the way of everything, you know, and but I don't know. It's
So much that my husband and I don't vote together.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, when I was about 15, I read the Warren Report, which was, I was kind of upset when I was a kid about, you know, JFK being, you know, assassinated. And I read this Warren Report, and I told my dad, I said, the government killed John F. Kennedy, basically.
Right.
And he was going, you know, and I told him, you know, about four different things that the, you know, people didn't like about, you know, Kennedy that could have gotten him killed. You know, and now we know that the government lied, and there wasn't a single shooter. You can actually hear two different guns going off. You know, two different, you know, rifles that were different. You know, and now all of a sudden all this stuff is hidden again. You know, it's not going to come out for another, you know, what they're saying 6 or 8 more years or something. But, you know, this stuff wasn't even, you know, every time it's getting ready to come out, they put it another 50 years in the future, you know. Mm-hmm. It's so bad what happened that nobody wants anybody to know about it.
It's,
you know.
It's like Bob's saying
because
on here.
The crap's still going on.
Well, Bob said it, you know,
Yeah.
on here. He says, my kid's teacher asked asked her where she gets her information from, and she said she watches Fox News with me, and the teacher told her she needs to stop because they're misinforming her. And he said, "I'll leave it at that."
They call it fake news.
Yeah.
When they're the ones that do the fake news.
Right.
Fake news is distorting the news and swaying people into a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
Well,
even with
I'm conservative, and I don't really, when I was working as a tennis coach and stuff, I didn't, push any conservative views. I just helped the kids out,
Yeah,
and
that's what your job is.
Yeah. But one of the other coaches found out I was conservative, and he basically told me, "You can't say anything about, you can't say anything." And I got, and all of a sudden, a few of the kids were looking at me. They weren't treating me the same, And I figured, this guy was, he worked for a Democratic senator as an aide, was a staffer. He got caught gambling and lost $60,000.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Fired. Yeah, and had 3 kids, 3 girls, and a wife, and the one girl basically lost her mind in the middle of all this. So, I didn't even find this out until a couple years after, I wasn't working there anymore. But, I saw what the public schools do. I taught kids that were homeschooled. I taught private school kids, and I taught tons of public school kids. And there was a huge difference between the public school kids and the rest,
Yeah.
And the
Well, you can see
homeschool kids and the private school kids. They actually knew history. They actually knew how many states were in the union. The public school kids didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's getting pretty. So, I mean, you can imagine, with the way that all these politics happen and history in general. I mean, back 100 years ago or whatever, how different it was, and the stuff people took care of themselves, and a lot of that went on because there was no, basis, just morals. So that was one. Your moral values back then, and in the way that you were raised, and well, we see a difference in our generation and the next generation, obviously, even in the way our parents lived. Because like what Pauline said, he grew up in the Depression. So there's a different attitude. Mm-hmm. They saved everything. They made do with what they had. They did. They had a lot of hands-on kind of knowledge. And nowadays I get aggravated.
Right now, it's when the internet has changed everything
to
the point where it's disrupted the old ways of doing stuff.
Yeah.
You can see it. A lot of stuff's falling apart because you have instant information at your hands. Everybody's connected all over the whole world now, and it's not. You can't hide stuff like you used to. It's instant news. But you have a filter too.
Right.
But, nobody knows
that's my problem.
all this stuff is going to do. Because it's disrupted TV. It's disrupted everything. Now the internet has become so important that it almost takes over your life.
Yeah.
Whereas, before you were fed this stuff through, a newspaper or a magazine.
Or from family or whatever.
Now we got all kinds of different things and, different, political perspectives on every every subject there is.
Well, we've pretty much turned into a.
You even see it. We even see it in archaeology and stuff.
Oh yeah.
They cheat and they do all kinds of weird stuff, and I don't know. It's just
there seems to be like a half. I always try to say this too. When we talk about archaeology and stuff, and there's a lot of them. I'd say 80% of them that really. They love what they're doing. They do a good job and everything. But you have that fringe that always seems to, what me and Craig see and a lot of you guys have seen in the past. You get that fringe of people that are not dark side, but just unruly as far as the way they want to do things. So when we talk about archaeologists, whatever, we're not including everybody because I know a lot of archaeologists, pretty cool guys and ladies there. It just, you get that the few, not bad apples, but the people that are just, I don't know, Craig, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to be.
Well, we're
you know,
basically antagonistic,
right?
Because we're
that's
doing it our way, and they think their way is the only way to do it.
Yeah, I think our way is.
I've debated with teams of these people, a bunch of times, and they're not bad people. I mean, it's just the way they think and the way they, want to do stuff. But it's also a business. They make money. This is their career,
right.
Whereas we do it for fun. And
even that being said, though, Craig, we don't just because we do it for fun. I think a lot of. I mean, I've always said this. There is somebody in our group. We're going to call it a hardcore hobbyist or whatever across the board, as far as bottle hunters and privy diggers and gold prospectors and everything. There's a lot of us out there that we may not know about the whole gamut of an era, but we know Civil War, or we know Spanish-American War, or we know Revolutionary colonial stuff, individual items, what they are, and there's a lot of knowledge. And you put something up that you find on the internet, and I've done it many times. Hey, what is this, guys? It's pretty cool looking. Is this old? Is it new? Even I have to do that, but from the experience and the knowledge in our group, it's important. I mean, we're saving history. We do it a different way, but I think as a majority of us are interested in saving the history, saving the character of that time, where an archaeologist is looking back maybe farther, looking for different things. They're not in the same. They're looking for pottery. They're looking for soil composition. A whole gamut of items that apply to what they do. Where we're keying in on, obviously, metal items, ferrous, non-ferrous items, but we're also doing the site reading, where it's found at. We pretty much know if we're hunting a field where it is, so we can locate. And we're only hunting, we'll say, 2 foot of the ground. Where in most of the shows that I've seen, and of course they're on TV, so we can't go 100% by them. They're digging down. Okay, well, we know the first 3 foot is nothing, so we're going to dig that out of the way real fast. Then we'll start looking. So we're not really infringing on their so-called, I watched a show, and it really, Pauline knows which one I'm talking about. It annoyed me at first.
I'll say the name of it. It's Time Team.
Time Team, right. It's a show that was on Netflix, a documentary series type thing. And they said it many times during that show that we were looters. And I absolutely pissed me off, because we're not going, and it makes it sound like we're robbing graves and stuff like that. And the way they said it was many times, it was as a broad spectrum. That's what they were calling it, because some metal detectorists came in there and hunted an area that was private property.
When I was first metal detecting, and I was metal detecting in my yard, this was probably about 1987, and all of a sudden I heard somebody go, "You're one of those people." And I looked around, and it was my old 7th grade principal.
Right.
From the school that I'd gone to, that lived in the neighborhood. She was walking her dog, and I thought, I'm one of those people? And I started thinking, it didn't dawn on me at first what she meant,
Right.
And that's even back then, they looked down on us. And I've had, when I was, doing the dig at Manassas, I talked to the archaeologists there. They got really touchy, because I knew what the stuff was.
Right.
And so, I basically, during lunchtime, I sat there, and there was 15 archaeologists arguing with me. And I was calm. I went through the whole thing. I said, I'm educated. I went to GW University. I got a degree.
Mm-hmm.
You guys got a degree, but I've been doing this hobby for, at the time, for probably 15 years or more. And so I said, I know, from reading. Anybody can learn stuff from reading. If you read enough books, and you can be just as good as an archaeologist. That's what you do in college. You study.
Right.
To get these degrees. So, it's, and we have a passion for it. That's what I told them. I said, this is a job for you guys. We have a passion for it.
This is a lifestyle for us. This is a addiction.
It's a thrill. Yeah, I mean, we're the first one to touch some of this stuff, And, they don't find the stuff that we find either.
Well,
not that often.
Well, the ironic thing about this whole deal, though, Craig, was that, and I think I mentioned it, I'm not sure if I did or not on the last show or the show before, was that after they called us looters 25 times, it seemed like in that show, and it really had me aggravated. I almost didn't watch the next show because I was like, okay, if they're already looking down, we're contributing. A lot of times, and not every time, but a lot of times, I think that you'll see it, a metal detectorist or something like that. Somebody found something, and that's what brought the attention, the limelight to that area, and it turns out to be something really great and everything. But you just hear the archaeologist side of it, which is, that's what they do for a living and everything. But we contribute. They wouldn't have any idea where to look at sometimes if one of us hadn't started the ball rolling. A lot, and I would always.
It's like they found 2 artifacts, 2 3-ring bullets out of 500 test holes that they dug, and we went in the same area with metal detectors and found 1,080 artifacts.
Right. So we know what we're doing.
I mean,
very thorough.
They were shocked. They were absolutely shocked. That kind of stuff came out of there. You could tell. But did it ever come out in the paper or anything that we did all that stuff? Nah. They never talked about it. They didn't want anybody to know that, that we were that good at finding stuff like this.
Well, the next show that I watched on this series, the next show, I think it was, they had their own team of metal detectorists or whatever, the archaeologists, metal detectorists. They're out there with Nautilus metal detector. The only reason most people that are not in the hobby would have no clue what the heck the metal detector was or what brand it was. It was definitely a Nautilus, but they were told to search a certain area. They are archaeologists, is what they use. But that was the first time I'd ever seen an archaeologist with a metal detector in his hand. A classified whatever.
Yeah,
metal.
I've heard stories where the funny thing is they put, I don't care what they say. These archaeologists have metal detectors, or they have some. I know people that. One guy that called us looters, that was the head of basically Northern Virginia. We even had him at our club for a talk, and he was so nervous. I said, "We're not going to do anything to you."
Well, yeah, I mean,
yell at you. We just want you to do whatever, talk about whatever, But we just wanted to show them that we're not evil people.
No.
We had one guy who was a CIA and director at the CIA.
Right.
And,
there's cops and
firemen,
lawyers, everything else.
People,
everybody does it.
We had all people from all walks of life there, and they look at it. A lot of it, they looked at people, and you're a bunch of rednecks, digging up stuff,
Yeah, we're looters.
It's always been kind of associated with, a redneck hobby too.
Yeah.
So.
But as far as
that's
oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean, they'll say that, but I'm almost positive 95% of us out there in this hobby, if we came across something that was more than, we were finding more stuff than we ever thought we would find in an area, we're probably going to start saying something. We saw it happen in England when the guy found the Celtic treasure. He said it himself. He says, I dug up one thing, it's beautiful gold, whatever, and he digs up another piece of gold. By the third or fourth, he started getting nervous. This is bigger than me. This is definitely historical. There's definitely something going on here. So he stopped and went and talked to the museum or whoever he talked to and got a team of archaeologists out there, and they ended up finding monetary value. Was it $2.5 million worth of treasure in this farmer's field that probably would have never, ever been hunted by an archaeology team at all if it hadn't been for that man going out there to have fun, to have recreation, and come across a treasure. And this doesn't stop just with that. I mean, even Hillsborough State Park, I've talked to the ranger down there many years ago about whether I could metal detect in there. Of course, you can't hunt state parks in Florida. Didn't know it at the time, but I asked. And he says, no, we did bring in 14 metal detectorists, and they did get us started, and we actually found the fort, where the fort was. So they do use us. I just wish that it was a little bit more of a team, because they don't realize how much all of us would crave to have not only a place to hunt, to save history, to help out, and to enjoy it at the same time, and it would be helping the archaeologists out to get locations. There's a team. There could be a team effort right there, and it doesn't have to be all this animosity. I don't think it's really us to them. It's more them to us. I mean, I don't have any problem. I personally have not seen very many archaeological sites down here in Florida. I know they were doing one down here in, I can't remember the town now, it was somewhere around Tampa or St. Petersburg, whatever, where they found the ship or the boat in the water. I haven't heard any updates on that, but they know it was old, and they were going to, they sent an archaeology team in there to excavate it out of the water or whatever they're going to do with it down there. That's probably one of the few times I've seen an actual archaeological team going out and doing something around here. I've not seen anywhere in this county. Maybe I'm wrong, but
about a mile from my house right now, there's a Belgrove's mansion that I think it was from late 1700s, maybe early 1800s. Then James Madison, it was his home, and that somebody had read diaries or something and found that there was several cemeteries, but they figured that there had to have been one for the earliest people, and it wasn't. And they ended up finding it, I think. But they just bought a whole bunch more land on this one road, and they got a big area dug out, and there's like about 15 archaeologists. We saw them the other day, and they all had little hand spades in their hands.
And that's
basically scraping the dirt.
Yeah, they do it a different way than we do, obviously. I mean, and I think it's Relics Radio's on chat here. I think it's either Seven or Jeff. He said he's worked with a couple archaeologists in Kentucky, and both were had both great relationship with them. That's awesome. I mean, because that does, that's I think the general thought of our side of it. We want to work with them. I'd love to be involved in some kind of, hey, we think there might be something out here. Go out here and see what you find. Mark it, something, so that we have an idea of where to start doing their test holes and this and that. It always made sense to me to do that. Even some of the other shows, the documentaries I watched, especially about the Vikings, when they were found evidence in Canada or one of the islands around that, they were out there with what they call a magnetometer. It looked like, to be honest with you, a 2-inch piece of PVC pipe. But obviously it's electronical. But that's what they were using to find iron bits or whatever from a settlement they believed to be Viking. And they were using this thing, and I thought to myself right off the bat, if you're looking for a blacksmith or a iron, to show that they had a blacksmith there, wouldn't it make sense to use a metal detector? I mean, really. I mean, even a pulse induction, something to give you the area. Obviously, if you have more activity in this area than anywhere else, it's probably going to be where the blacksmith was, where he did his work, because there's going to be pieces of metal everywhere. And that's where I thought the situation called for at least giving you an idea. They only had, I think, 8 days or 16 days or something to locate this area. Why not, hey, you cut down your time a little bit, at least give you, so you can get your job done to find the history you need to. Use the detectorists to come in here. We know our stuff. That's what we do. Put it in all metal, mark everything, and then they have a head start, instead of having to spend 10 days just looking for a spot to dig or whatever, finding by doing the test holes and this and that and the other thing.
Well, that's what we did at Manassas at the battlefield.
Right.
They basically, one guy had gone in with a metal detector in all metal, and just they put a stake every signal.
Right.
And the trouble was, is we started digging, and there was all these nail signals. And after about 10 nails that were all round-headed, I told him, this is ridiculous. Why are we digging out these nails? Let me get a good target.
Yeah,
and,
mark it. Yeah.
Something that I know is not a nail. And they were like, oh, no, these nails. I said, no, look, they're not period nails. They're probably from the 1920s or even earlier.
Right.
I mean, even later. But, they finally admitted, that they didn't really know anything about Civil War artifacts or anything.
No,
they just had no experience at all in it.
Well, a lot of their training, too, comes in earlier civilizations, too. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, it'd be like them going to looking for World War II
Well,
stuff.
yeah,
I mean,
they basically, they were shocked at the stuff that we found. I mean, they didn't have no idea. I mean, they ended up using the Northern Virginia Relic Hunters Association Club, which I was a member of, to, basically cover the whole battlefield for the next 2 years. And they took groups out every weekend. And, some people found their first artifacts even. And they found two things about the first, I think it was Second Manassas, that weren't in the history books. They were wrong,
Yeah.
So they were really, I mean, that was a major coup for them, because they found out two major things about, the battlefield, for the actual battle.
Right.
That were wrong, and they corrected them, so that, gave them something to write about. And it was, and it was all because they found a Louisiana button and these 54 caliber 3-ringers in a line.
Right.
And they thought, wait a minute, those Louisiana soldiers were half a mile away from here. And they go, well, obviously they weren't.
Nope.
And this is the type of bullets they use too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then they wondered why they were all in a line. And one of the relic hunters said, there was probably a fence here, and they all went over the fence, and the cartridge box tipped over a little bit and dropped a bullet or two out.
Well, we've heard.
They went over the fence because it's all in a line. Why would Obviously, everybody was in a line here that dropped them, and it's probably because they went over a fence.
Well, you talk about it too, Craig, about how they dump stuff off. I mean, like the 69 calibers, they didn't want to carry that heavy weight around them. They dumped off and grabbed 58 calibers.
Yeah, a lot of soldiers on the march. I mean, when I found a 12-pound cannonball, and I was carrying it back to the car, and I had to go 2.5 miles back to the car. After 100 yards, it felt like it was 120 pounds, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is going to kill me bringing this thing all the way back home." Because I'm kind of, carrying it. It's hard to carry. It's just kind of awkward. And I finally found a drywall bucket in this gully and just put it in there and carried it, and that was easy. But I started thinking, they had a cartridge box with 40 bullets in it. They had, this heavy gun. A lot of times they had a bayonet, and probably a canteen or something.
It's a lot of weight.
A lot of heavy equipment. And they were on marches. They were marching 10. Probably if you're a Yankee, you were going 10 miles a day. The Confederates are going 20, a day a lot of times. But they would drop bullets. They would just pitch bullets out of their, just to lighten the load.
Well, I could tell you in this day, the stuff that we even do. The guys out here, sorry about that, that's my dog going off out there. At any rate, what we're doing right now, even Seven said it on here. He did some work at a historical church that is now a Kentucky State Park, and he was able to locate the original church site. Anybody who's been in this hobby for a while, I've done it. People have told me many times, "Oh, there's never been anything in this pasture ever. My family's owned it, and here I find home sites." And they said, "Well, that can't be." I said, "Well, when you're finding doorknobs and hinges and spoons and silverware and this and that and the other thing in its central location and nothing anywhere else, obviously there had to have been something there." And we do this a lot of times, and historically it may not be like the big find of the century or anything, but you still saved some history, saved a location. Now you've documented, hey, I found this here in this part of the country or whatever, and now we know. Hang on a second, we got a caller coming in, guys.
Woohoo!
Hang on, I think they're almost on here. Hey, you're live on the air. Who do we have there?
Hey, this is Seven out
of
Kentucky. How you doing, guys?
Not too bad, brother. How you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I was just going to elaborate on the old church site.
Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Because, we have kind of a strained relationship with archaeologists a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the pleasure of working with two of those. And in 1798, there was a church group that moved out of Tennessee up into Kentucky. They built a church there, and then eventually in like 1805, they built a log church that is still standing. Actually, it's probably about 300 yards from my house, and I wrote a history book on that church and all the movement and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was always looking for the original building site that came in. And the old record said that it was like, 75 to 100 yards from the original structure. And I told the administrator at the church, I said, I can find that if you'll let me work with the archaeologist.
Mm-hmm.
So they came in, and I found that within the first hour. And we found it by finding the square nails and the debris field of the original church there. But a good thing about it, of working with an archaeologist, they don't have to dig to find that. We can find the signals, and then they know where to dig. But another thing is, after you dig, they can bring in a lot of knowledge about that. There was an old rock that is still sticking out of the ground. It's one that you can actually sit on, It's not too
Mm-hmm.
high, maybe a foot and a half. But around in front of that rock, I found a half-moon layer of horseshoe nails. And the archaeologist told me, he said they used to have old camp meetings back in the late 1700s and 1800s, and whenever they would have that, here in Kentucky, they'd have 150 or 200 people come, and they always hired a furrier to come to reshoe the horses, where they had come.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, that's what you found right here. And so they took all that stuff, and it's all on display here at the state park and everything. So we had a wonderful relationship together.
I think it's, Seven, I think, you've been in the hobby a long time too. I mean, I think on a whole, the metal detectorists, hobbyists, whatever, relic hunters, I think it's pretty open. We wouldn't mind working with a lot of these guys if they would have us. Usually what I have found, and Craig has definitely found, because he's in Virginia, around Alexandria. Of course, it's a different realm of history as far as the archaeologists go around there. He deals a lot more. There's good ones, but he deals with a lot more of the ones that are
in
difficult.
Alexandria, they were embedded in the city government. It was the only archaeologists that were actually city archaeologists that made a salary that in the country at the time. I don't know if it's still true or not, but there was a lot of jealousy about it from the other archaeologists in the whole area, because they basically work on contract. It's a tough job unless you get up higher in the hierarchy.
Well, what I was getting at, Craig, though, with like you and Seven, though, you guys have seen a lot of this stuff, but as a whole, I think we're more than willing to work with these. We'd love to, only because it gives us a chance to apply our trade, and have fun doing it and stuff. I don't think that we're ruining anything, because we're not digging down, crazy depths that they're looking at. It's even like, they talk about arrowhead hunters and bottle hunters, and a lot of them are pretty particular how they do their hobby. They're pretty thorough. I've watched a lot of videos recently, because I've been getting in more into the Indian artifact area of their hobby, and how they excavated it out and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I just
seems like the archaeologists hate that even worse, almost.
Well, yeah, they do here in Florida. Yeah.
Some of the experts that I know, like the guy that does digging in Texas, they dig down 13 feet with a bobcat in the Indian area, and they pay the landowner to do it, and but they know more about all the early man, and I could listen to that guy for hours. The stuff they've learned just by digging up the artifacts over the years, and it's amazing.
Well,
I think it also matters what part of the country that you live in.
Yes, sir.
I know Craig is in Virginia, and predominantly probably
Northern Virginia
around
is
those.
bad.
Yeah,
but outside
and
of Northern Virginia, where I am now, and I'm in the battlefield area in northern Shenandoah now, but I was down right on the Potomac River, and that area is all, built up. It's just a metropolis, now.
And when you have that, you get a lot of liberal-minded people that are in charge, and you cannot deal. I hate to say it, but you cannot deal with liberal-minded people.
No.
I'm in southern Kentucky, and it's basically all conservative-minded people, and they're a completely different lot of people to deal with.
Yeah, that's the way it is up here.
One of the Civil War battle sites that I worked is about a mile from my house, and it's the first battle that John Hunt Morgan had in his first raid in Kentucky. And whenever I started it, every bullet, every button, every plate, everything that I dug, I GPS marked it and logged it. And then I worked with an archaeologist after I had dug 500 or 600 relics. And I said, help me make sense out of everything that I found, marking the Confederate stuff and the Union stuff. And he was actually able to draw the battle line and the retreat line of the Union Army. So, we've got something, each group has something to bring to the table. We can find the relics easier than they can, but then they can help us interpret what we find. And I think that kind of opened up the door for me to work with the other archaeologists on the church site.
Now, when that church site, Seven, was it because you found the site? Is that the reason why they made it into a state park now? Is that one of the contributing factors? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure because I thought that would be really cool too to be a part of that.
No, it's been a state park for a number of years. It's the oldest log church in Kentucky. Is what it is.
Wow.
And I actually, about 10, 12 years ago, I did a lot of research, for about 2 years on it, and I wrote a book. It's the name of the old church is Old Mulkey, Mulkey. And I wrote a book on it, and everybody knew that there was an original structure. And whenever I wrote my book, I just put in there what information that we had, that it was maybe up to 100 yards from the existing structure now. And I always wanted to know. And so I think, some of the things that I had done in documenting the Civil War camp, also writing the book, that those kind of opened up doors to where the guy said, the archaeologist said, do you think you know where it's at? I said, I've got a pretty good idea. And he said, well, bring your metal detector and let's get in
there. You go.
We dug every signal. If he wasn't there, I put a red flag up. I put the whatever I dug, whether it's a square nail or whatever, I put it in a little plastic bag and put a number on it and GPS marked everything. And so, now we know where that original structure was. Not that it's all that important, I don't guess, but
well, it is important. Yeah, I mean that's what I was.
When we were over at Manassas, they actually had a laser system where they actually used a laser beam to mark each spot. In fact, they were complaining about it because it was kind of complicated on setting it up and everything. But they actually could put a grid on a map, where every single artifact had come from.
Yes. Well, now it's kind of easier.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, now, like when I was at the CWPPO up there last time, we actually, as a geolocate or something like that, we Sam and Evan had a program, and if you found anything that was era, that you'd mark it on your cell phone or whatever and locate it, whatever, and they'd have a whole. It went into a central file, and then they could tell, what their hopes was is that everybody's finding stuff. They could actually mark the path. Where they took it, whether they find bullets or tools or whatever the heck they were finding through there, they could all locate. I thought about doing that on this property that I have permission on now because it is historical. And there's no information. We're going to say they're guessing, when it was built, how it was built, where it came from, and obviously the property, it's like a mile and a half from my house, but the stagecoach road came right up along my property line. And I thought about starting over there and working my way as far as I can work it on that property to work it back to see the exact path of the stagecoach road, which shouldn't be hard to do, depending on the items I find, and actually using that program to be able to locate. So we have a map of it, all the finds that I make that are period, excuse me, to at least have a record of it, because obviously nobody really knows about it.
And it's not that hard to do. Whenever I worked the Civil War camp, I had my MineLab CTX, and it had GPS inside it.
Right.
And I would mark those, and then every day, whenever I finished hunting, I'd come in and download those on my computer and then put them into Google Earth and just put a dot, on each one of those. The place that you're talking about, where the old bridge came across and everything, I would seriously think about documenting, at least GPS marking all of that, and just take a little notebook with you and write a number down, and write the item, and you'll be surprised how much that you will learn whenever you go back and you begin to compile all that stuff. And it's work, it's more work than just digging a hole and getting the relic out and covering the hole up, but you're saving another part of history.
Oh yeah, and I figured the way you listed too on those GPS programs, I know that the one we were using up there for that hunt, for the Morgan Raider hunt, was the being able to put what the item, what you believe it is or whatever, and the depth you found it at, and so it gives them a really good record on depth, what the item is, and you could follow a path or wherever wherever they gathered. Maybe it was where they had their picnics at or whatever, where people stayed at, where houses used to be, or shanties or whatever you want to call them, because when they come across a river, that was probably the stopping point anyways for the night. They're not going to. That's a safe place to stop. So I just don't know what. And Seven, this place is just. You can look out and you can metal detect just about everywhere, only because the grass is not real thick and high. It's just pretty low. So, you're looking at this huge fall. This one parcel is 450 acres.
Something like 400 acres.
Yeah, 450 acres just in that one parcel. And then it goes into the one behind my house. It's just another. It's close to 400 acres anyways, and then it goes actually north of that too. This man, I don't think he's on board. I've not met him personally yet. I met the land keeper or whatever, the guy that's watching over the property for him. But he said, man, this, he just was blown away that I actually had a photo of this bridge before they tore it down in 1961, because he bought it 25 or 30 years ago. And he always thought the bridge was in the water, and we're going to find that out because I can get right down to the water, and I'll just bring. I can't really, I can, but with the gators and the water moccasins and everything else we got going on right now, I'm not going to. I'm not scared of snakes, and I'm darn sure not scared of gators.
My little Yankee boy ain't no dummy.
Yeah, that's right, because I'm a big piece of prime rib to one of those gators. Now I'm a big boy, and he could feed for a couple weeks on me. So yeah, I'm gonna take that a little more gingerly. But it's just. You ever been on a site, Seven, where you just got you can feel the area. I don't know how to put it other than that. You got that aura thing or whatever you want to call it, the surroundings. You just get that feeling there. And I've walked away from sites. There's a couple sites I've walked because it didn't feel right. And I know there's a lot of other hunters out there had the same experience. I didn't know if you've ever had that experience.
Sure, but I tell you what it is. It's experience. We've done it for so many years. Mm-hmm. And you just begin to have a feeling about a place. Your subconscious, mind reads the lay of the land and everything, and where the water is and where the high spots are, and you begin to look at land and sites in a different way than somebody new in the hobby. Somebody new in the hobby that gets to see a field. Yeah. And you and I, we see potential sites, and we're able to find them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for everything.
By the way,
go ahead.
I wanted to say something to Kurt about the button that you found. What a fabulous button that was.
Oh yeah, I was really excited about that one.
Yeah.
I found a few I've found a few one pieces, over the years, but nothing like that one with that much gold and stuff on it.
Craig,
it probably has even
I've got-
more gold on the front, but I'm afraid to mess with it, and I might lose some that I already have. It looks good already, but
Yeah.
I
Oh,
got a I don't know if you heard, but I got a wreath to a sash buckle the other day.
Yeah, I heard
So
you
I haven't
talking
found
about
the
it.
tongue yet. It'd be kind of neat if I found the tongue.
Craig finds some awesome stuff. He just, stuff with a lot of character. We talk about it on this show, where we find a coin with a hole in it that was holed out. A coin collector, it's nothing to them. It's a piece of junk to them. With us, it's the character of the item that you're finding. If it's hold, it was hold for a reason or whatever. And that's what it always, the patina on an item or whatever, that really gets the juices flowing, so to speak. You found something really old. You're the first person to put your hands on it, but it also tells the story of the area too. So you start looking for more stuff. And Craig, when he got that place up there, he's still making great. He found 2 breastplates in his yard. I mean, a partial. I'm like, oh my God! And it's just like
all these people were, saying, what in the heck is going on with your yard? And I said, well, I actually picked this yard hoping it would probably have, I thought it would have the greatest chance of having relics of all the houses that I saw, and I looked all up and down the valley. I spent 8 months, and I had to move because of the taxes and everything from my mom's house. And so I decided if I'm going to, buy a house, why not buy one with a big yard and an old house and, right in the middle of a battlefield.
right.
So I'm right in the middle of Cedar Creek and several other, 2 major battles right down the street. A block and a half from me is the Wayside Inn, which was used as the headquarters by both armies. And the town turned over 131 times during the Civil War. It's incredible. And it was a battle line like 4 blocks up where Early met Sheridan, and then got defeated. They could have won the war probably if they hadn't done that. But right down the half a block is First Street, and the Union Army retreated after Stonewall Jackson broke them and retreated. That was their retreat route right down that street. There's a cabin right across the street from me that's from 1700s, and they were doing a bunch of stuff on the property. And my friend next door, we've known each other since we were 12, and he lived next door, which was kind of like a total coincidence when I bought this house. But anyway, he found a Burnside breastplate in that side yard over there. And they turned it. They found a bunch of fired bullets and a couple buttons and things, and they are going to give it to the town for the display. And there was one guy was a city council member, but there's so many relic hunters up in this area. It's just incredible.
Yeah, with you in Kentucky, Seven. I mean, obviously a lot of people are hunting for Civil War items, but you're still finding stuff. I saw Tennessee Jeff, one of his videos where he's finding buttons. He's finding he's in Tennessee. I've had the privilege of hunting with Tom and Bill up there outside of Murfreesboro and stuff. Are you still finding breastplates and stuff like that, or buckles, or are they just really sparse now, or are you still able to locate one or two a year? I don't know. In Kentucky, or is it?
Well, yeah, we're having to do a lot of hunting now in Kentucky. There are no relic hunters right here around me, none.
Well, that's awesome.
And everybody in the county now calls me every day and saying, I think there's no house out here. I think there's no house out on me over here,
Yeah.
And so I just got unlimited places to go. But no relic hunters here. Now, where Jeff is, which is an hour and a half away, it's full of relic hunters.
Right.
But you just have to, just keep looking and finding the old sites and keep doing your research.
Yeah, when I lived in northern Virginia I hunted along the Potomac, for 40 miles, basically, most of the early part of my relic hunting on Maryland's and Virginia side.
Mm-hmm.
But, those places have been hunted, hard. They started hunting in the 60s, actually, with mine detectors.
Yeah, the 18-pound things or whatever they were.
Yeah,
most of the areas
I remember those
were,
days.
we'd go out in the woods, and it was just developer land, and nobody cared about trespassing and all that stuff back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd see guys all the time in the woods, and I met some of the legends of metal detecting, over the years, out, and we'd sit there and start talking, and we wouldn't even be relic hunting. We'd just be sitting there talking for an hour, which to me was great because you'd find out all kinds of information, and I would always try to ask guys, hey, got any hammered spots you want to let me get to?
Yeah, no
Tell me
kidding.
about.
That's
But it got so where I started finding all these good stuff out of their hammered spots, so they stopped telling me.
Yeah. I was going to say, Seven, I said, that's my heart bleeds for you, brother. I feel so bad that people call you up and say, hey, come out here and hunt. Because I wish I had that problem down here. These spots, I know where spots are. I know there's major history to be found, but it's just so hard to get permission to hunt on them because of the old, and I can't blame them. I mean, they're old school tradition, old school, they don't want people trespassing. They don't, you have to get to know people. And once they trust you and they know that you're not out to, whatever, they got this idea, a lot of people have this idea, oh, if you find treasure, you're not going to, you're going to rip us off and this and that, there's that dark side to it. And I think now people are starting to understand, hey, we want to find it. I've told many people, I've hunted their property, hey, if I find anything that deals with your home or the period, that you would want, I'll give it to you. I just want to find it. I want to get a photo. I want to get a video. I want to have the experience of finding it. And I think that's the way a lot of us are doing it.
Something that I've never found before.
Right.
I have plenty of common things. I got so many bullets and round balls and stuff, eagle buttons.
I think
I don't care about those that much. If somebody wants all that, that's fine.
Craig probably has 2,000
have...
pounds of bullets there, Seven. So he saves every bullet, everything he's ever found. Craig saves. I've seen it.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
I never sold anything. I don't sell anything. I never have. And most relics.
Oh, you guys are killing each other. Hang on, Seven. Go ahead.
I said we have to develop a relationship with the public. And the way that I've done that is all of my Civil War stuff related to the Battle of Tompkinsville is the town that I live in. I have documented all that. I've made up displays, and I put them in our local museum, which is a really small museum. Mm-hmm. But then I also go there and speak, and then I have the fortune of going to every school in our county every year, taking Civil War bullets and relics, and telling the story of the battles in our town. And I'm going to do that until I die, because when we quit doing that, then they're going to quit teaching that.
Exactly.
And we want these kids to know the truth, and we want them to hold, just to see their face and to say, that bullet that Americans were shooting at Americans,
Yeah.
And the opportunity to just talk about the Civil War and all of the things. It wasn't all about slavery. I mean, that was a part of it, but that wasn't all of it. Mm-hmm. But I have the opportunity to let them see that side of it and see everybody in the community know that. And so they get excited about it, and then they say, come thing over here,
Right. I mean, it's educating. I was telling Craig the other day, that my wife works with a girl there. She has a couple of kids, and they've been hounding her. I got to get it. It's been raining so much down here, but they're, I think, 8 and 12, and they've already asked me, "Are you going to bring the metal detector over soon?" And I'm going to take one of these quests over there, let them play, and use it. But even their mom said, "This is good. I haven't seen my kids get excited about history or finding stuff. To them, it's finding treasure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's how and I'm creating two little monsters. I know they're going to be addicted to metal detecting before they graduate high school, I'm sure, because this is the kind of mentality. But they're so smart. That's one thing I got to say about a lot of these kids now. So book smart, which is a good thing in a way. But the street smart or the real world smarts is what they need to so they can live their life good. You know, what I mean, they got to know what happened in the past so that they, as a generation, don't make the same. Exactly, and that's what you're doing by helping those kids out. Yeah, by helping out those kids in your town. Hey, that's awesome, brother. That's a good deal. I mean, you know, you're.
And you and I remember back when we went to school, history was boring, but history to these kids here, especially the Civil War history and colonial history, we've got a few colonial sites here.
Yep.
When they hold a relic in their hand, history comes alive in your community, in your backyard. And that makes a difference, and those kids are more interested in history now. And that's the key to the next generation. Learn the history so you don't make the same mistake again.
And you're putting something in their hands, like you said. That here's a Civil War bullet from 1860 or whatever.
Doing that kind of shocks people because they don't realize how heavy those bullets were. And it gives you. I do that all the time. I just drop a bullet in somebody's hand, when I'm talking about, I show stuff in my house I'll show somebody that doesn't really know anything, and then I'll say, here's a bullet, and they go, oh my God, it's so heavy.
Yeah.
It's like it's shocking to them. It's not like, that bullet was one of the most devastating bullets in history.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine it thrown at you, let alone shot at you. I mean, God,
I know. So, that's something that a lot of people, will remember. They'll always remember how heavy that bullet was and what it looked like. Probably, that's what I try to do.
Well, I shot a video. My mother and I took her out to metal detecting for Mother's Day because she wanted to actually run the metal detector. Usually she digs for me. That's been her thing. I'll dig the target. Yeah. But I took her to Clearwater Beach, or just away from the public side of the actual beach to the next beach over. But anyway, I was videoing her just to, for my sister to see or whoever, and I was going to make a video of it. But what I noticed in the video, every person that walked by sat there, and as they were walking, their heads turned, and they're watching her metal detect. And they see us start digging, they stop and watch us dig up whatever. It could have been a bottle cap, didn't matter. But they all thought it was really cool. Even, not just kids, we're talking, seniors or whatever. It's naturally, I think, it draws people's attention. When I go metal detecting during the day at the beach, it's usually, I like going at night. I'm a night hawker when it comes to beaches because I don't get bothered so much. Not that it's a bother, but what I'm saying, you're hunting. If you have somebody coming up to you every 10 minutes, you have to spend 10 minutes talking to them. Not that I don't want to, but I'm there to enjoy myself and find stuff. So, but I find myself talking most of the time, to them because I'll ask a million questions. Well, they wouldn't do that if they didn't care about the hobby or weren't interested in the hobby. So why not create a good, I don't know, for younger kids, there's a lot of kids doing YouTube videos. I mean, tons of them compared to what it was even 5-10 years ago. So we have the next generation of hobbyists or relic hunters coming up now. They're watching what you do, what Craig does, what all of us do, and learning from it. So if we teach them the right way, and then it won't be, I don't know, it's bettering the hobby in the public's eyes, I think. They don't.
Right.
That really bothered me on that show. I mean, I'll say it again. We're not looters. I mean, it's like Seven or Craig or whatever. Even, all the guys on the chat here, we do stuff to save history. I think that's a premise for most of us that do videos and post up on the internet and everything else. I mean, every once in a while you find something awesome, but most of the time you go out, Seven, every time you go out, do you find treasure? I mean, no.
Well, it depends on how you define treasure, because
well, yeah.
I went out for an hour this morning, and I found a suspender clip, and I found a couple of wheats, and I found a rain scat, and all of those are relative treasure to me.
Right.
But,
right.
You don't. I don't find a lot of coins, but generally whenever I find one, it's a real or it's cat dust or something like that because of the sacks that we hunt. But no,
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of days whenever I go out that I may shoot one clip, and that's it. And,
Right.
Here a few years back, I dedicated myself that I was going to do a video every Tuesday, and it's a lot of work. I mean,
It
it's
is.
a lot of work to gather up all those clips and everything.
Well, you know what I
Hey
found
guys,
too.
thanks for letting me.
Oh, you're going to take
Thanks
off.
for letting me call in,
Oh, no problem.
and appreciate it. I always catch y'all's on listen to you whenever I'm on. And I hate it that we butt up against one another on Thursday night. But
No. That's all right, brother. That's like I said, we all run different formats and everything, and they always can catch our replays and, on the archives and stuff. So it's all good. We're all, there's like 5 or 6 different metal detecting shows on Spreaker as it is now, and probably more coming. But I mean, it's a good information, and that's what I found. That people love to download the shows no matter what they are. I mean, there's so many different formats on Spreaker. It's not funny, but it's all good. We're all out having fun and everything. But hey, you definitely call in some other time, man. Or I listen to your show too. Just a lot of times I don't get on chat or nothing like that, but I do listen to the archive shows and stuff. You have a lot of good guests on and stuff, so it all works out. No problem.
Yeah. When we first started there, we just picked a night, and I had no idea how many shows were on, and we picked a night that was good for us. But we went on at 7:00 Eastern time, and then a lot of our people said, you're going to have to move up an hour because we're still hunting, and we don't want to quit hunting,
Oh, yeah.
And then I realized that we butted up against you. I don't know.
No worries.
Maybe here in the near future we can move to another slot or something other.
Well,
anyway, thanks for letting me talk.
Well, my wife wanted to say something to you. 7, hang on a second.
Yeah, Pauline.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for calling in on my night, because every time I do a show, it ends up being about 2.5, 3 hours.
This has got to be one of the longest ones.
I was going to tell her to do me a favor and let you have another show, because we took your show over.
Oh, she's laughing.
That sounds good.
All right, 7. Thanks.
Yeah, let Pauline have another show.
Oh, I will. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
She. I often tell the guys, I said, if I let her do too many of the shows, I'm not going to have a show anymore because people like listening to her better than me.
Well, she is a good addition to it. You're blessed.
Yeah, she's my. Hey, I don't know what I'd do without her. To be honest with you, we've been together for a long time, and she puts up with me. So.
Thank
well,
you,
me and my
Kevin.
wife have been together for 40. We've been together for 40 years, and I tell you what, of all the treasure that I found, she's the best. And I'm sure that you feel the same way.
Yeah, my wife. You can hear her in the background. Yeah. All right, 7. We'll have a good night. Thanks for calling in, brother.
Good night. Yep.
Catch you later. Yeah, that, Craig, it's everybody in the hobby, and they listen to the shows and stuff. And, it's like, the Relic Roundup on Mondays. You have All Metal Mode. You have a History Seeker on Tuesdays and Beyond Sight and Sound with Josh Kimmel on Wednesdays. And, us and Relic Radio on Thursdays and Saturday nights for us. But, we all do shows, and I always tell all the listeners, man, there's a lot of good content. If anything else, if you can't listen to a live show on one of these guys or us, hey, download the archives. You just download it onto your phone or your computer or whatever. You can listen to it on your own time and get, just a fun, easygoing. Well, with our show, I just think it's like a round table discussion most of the time. Or
it's a back porch show.
A back porch metal detecting show. There we go.
There you go.
This hobby is extremely addictive. That's why it's like, what we say on our show on the, description and stuff. Metal detecting's habit forming. It's a good addiction to have. We live, breathe. Everything about metal detecting, relic hunting, bottle hunting, gold prospecting, whatever. Arrowhead hunting, whatever. It doesn't matter. It interests us because it's outdoor activity. It's adventurous. You're looking for something. It's like a treasure hunt. And you're not going to find treasure every time you go out. It's not. It doesn't work like that. You're going to find a lot of junk, but if you don't find junk, you can't find treasure. That's what it comes down to. You got to be, methodical in the way that you think about. No, you don't have to be, but I mean, if you're really into the hobby and you're methodical about the way you look at a site, the way you metal detect, the style and what you use. It doesn't even come down to metal detectors. There's so many different metal detectors out there. It's how you use a metal detector. It's half your responsibility to use it right and to learn it. I mean, I don't care if you buy a $5 million metal detector, it's not going to find you anything if you don't know how to use it. So what's that, Pauline? Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you can take this hobby as lightly or as serious as you want. You can be that 1 or 2 time a month hunter, or you can be the everyday hunter, because when you go out and you hunt, you tromp the woods, the beach, whatever, you find your stuff, and when the weather's good, you get out and hunt. And on those days that the good Lord decides you need to keep your butt inside, well, that's when you do your research, put your videos together, get them posted up, and share with everyone the ups and downs that you're having. I mean, let's look back at how you and Craig actually met. How long was it that you two knew each other and communicated before y'all actually shook hands? And that was by the blessing of the internet and your videos and being interested in the same things, and it works out really good.
Yeah, with Craig and me.
If it wasn't for all that, we would have never met.
I mean, I consider Craig one of my best friends. I mean, Craig has stuck with me, and I've stuck with him through all this stuff. We met in 2012 because we bought the same kind of metal detector. Within 2 months, we were partners in a forum, then on to authorized distributorship. We, hunted together. We never even met. We never even shook hands for 2 years. I think it was 2 years, right, Craig? 2015.
Yeah, at least.
3 years before we actually met face to face and shook hands. But I felt like I knew Craig because we talked so much on the internet and Facebook and YouTube and all this stuff. So, yeah, you can make friends on the internet. There's some people that say you can't. There's a lot of guys on this chat right now that I consider really good friends. Bill Marsh is one of them. Brandon Stewart, Barbara. I can go down the list right here because these people are all like-minded and they all believe in the same kind of stuff when it comes to metal detecting.
I almost have too many friends. It's hard to keep up with all of them.
Oh, it is. It is.
And but guys.
Yeah, Pauline.
Where I was going with that is, through this hobby, I've got my spouse in the other house, and I love it. So I may never find a piece of Cougaran or a piece of Spanish silver, but I found one of the best friends that Derek and I have as a couple. I mean, so that made this hobby worth everything to me. And if you may not find that treasure every day, but think of everybody you can touch every time you throw a video out. That's another friend that you're making. That's someone that's taking you at your word on what you're finding, how you're finding, how good your videos are, or how new you are to the hobby, and you can reach out and ask for help and make friends. Yeah. And as the more seasoned hunters, when you see these newer guys, younger guys, interesting guys or girls, reach out to them, because that's a like-minded person that can take you beyond your local realm for social networking. That's what it's all supposed to be about, is enjoying the hobby to the fullest.
Exactly. I mean, the places, just in the relationships you have in this hobby, you never know what doors are going to open up for you. And I'm not talking monetary, doors.
Oh, no.
I'm talking generally across the board. There's a lot of friendships, knowledge, history, everything else, even the places you hunt. I mean, I never thought in a million years I would have ever had a chance to.
We started a radio show,
Yeah, off the
you know, we did a lot of stuff that we would have never done with
Nope.
the internet and stuff.
Videos too. I mean,
Videos, radio show, forum,
Facebook pages,
you know,
everything.
website, you know, and you know, plus all the people we've met through all this. But you know, it's just amazing, you know, how the internet is connecting people all over the world now.
It's the good part of the internet. That's the good part of the internet, is being able to make friends and you know, with Skype and everything else, obviously you can see, you know, you can have Skype conversations or whatever, and that's, you know, FaceTime, whatever you have, so you physically see them too. But I mean, it's deeper than that. It's a deep friendship, like-minded people have, you know, in a hobby or whatever. It's probably just, it's one of the friendliest hobbies, I think. You know, you deal with sports people and everything. There's not so much backstabbing in this hobby, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say,
Yeah.
how many other hobbies or things like that can you find something amazing, like Craig's Cut Real, and nobody was like, well, USOB, da-da-da. Everybody was like, oh, man, that's so cool. That's great.
Yep.
This is the best hobby, to have a mega cheerleading crew on what you find.
Yeah. I mean, everybody, I live through, you know, when I can't hunt or whatever, when it's, you know, whatever, we're storming or whatever.
Oh, boy, the videos come on when
I
you
live
can't hunt.
your detecting trip with you. You know what I mean? I can't go metal detecting, so why not go metal detecting with somebody else? That's what the videos do. I mean,
exactly.
I didn't get to hunt, you know, I never would have thought I'd ever get to hunt Bulgaria. I never thought I'd get to, you know, hunt in some of these other countries. The guys that go over to Europe and stuff like that, in the UK and hunt over there. You know, there's some of them that travel over there. I love hearing what they find. I love seeing the pictures. And if they have video of it, great, because you know, I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. I may not be
Derek,
able to. Yeah.
Tell them how big your TV is.
Oh, I got a 70-inch plasma.
And then videos get put on that 70-inch plasma.
I got to see them.
And he gets lost in it.
I do. I mean,
he
you know,
loves them.
You know, and everybody does their videos different, a little bit different, and that's good. You know, I had a couple people tell me, well, you know, I want to make a video like yours or like Craig's or like, you know, Sevens or whoever. You know, I said, make your own video, do it your way, because, you know, it's yours. I don't want to see the same kind of video from everybody.
People always ask me, you know, what they should do, and I said, basically, you know, everybody starts out new. You know, try different things. You know, look at other people's videos and maybe borrow some things, but try to do your own thing.
Live,
you know, and come up with your own style.
It comes down to
that goes back to being true to yourself. Period.
Right. Yeah.
You're showing what you can do and who you are. And like Derek was going to say, who wants to see the same old kind of video, everybody doing it? And you know the ones I love? I absolutely love the whale poops.
Yeah, the
Can you believe this?
Yeah, the fails.
Yeah.
I've had them before, you know.
Oh, my God. And it's not that it's funny. It's real. It's real. Because we all do it. We don't find something great every time. Most of us edit that crap out. But, yes, I love it.
Well, you know,
absolutely.
You get, you know, people like, oh, I did it one time. I was making a video. I dig this coin out of the ground. It's about 8 inches in the ground. I'm like, oh, this is great. And I start rubbing the dirt off, and I see a ship. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, this is great. This is going to be on camera. And I'm like, and then it says, you know, 2005 or whatever. It was a Virginia. I think it was a quarter. I felt like, but I left it on the video because it's real. Hey, I fail once in a while, more often than not.
But that's not a fail.
No, it isn't.
That's an emotional high, and everybody was right there with you, and they giggled their butts off with you when you realized what it was.
And most of my videos, too, when I'm out hunting and stuff, I mean, I put up, you know, I found the shotgun shell. I found but it's real. It's not, you can't go out there and just, you know, if you just put up, every day is a, you know, wheat penny. that gets boring. What if you find a stinking Lincoln? Hey, but you found it, or you might find an Indian head or whatever else. I mean, it's just what was happening out there that day. And we've all had the days where we don't find anything at all, just except for junk. But then we have those other days where you might find 10 good targets in a row. It's just you're documenting what you're doing. And we didn't know how to do this. I mean, when I started up a radio show, and I can't even remember what year it was now. I'm getting old. But anyways, it was like 3 years ago, something like that. We started up on Mixlr. And me and Craig had listened to Detecting Lifestyle with Dave McMahon. And I think Josh Kimmel was doing shows also with Beyond Sight and Sound.
Yeah,
and
I've done a couple of shows with, I think one with a couple with Tim Glick, and I did one, about 3 on Detecting Lifestyle. And I think Tim and I did one on Beyond Sight and Sound. I'm not sure.
We did. Me and you did one with him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an adventure. You live many adventures in your life. You got to go for them, no matter where it ends up. I mean, adventure doesn't mean it's going to end up peaches and cream. It may not end up to be nothing. But if you don't take the chance, you're going to look back on it when you're 90 years old and I should have done this and I should have done. I never wanted to live like that. I want to take the initiative to chase adventure when I can, and to have that memory, and that's where the show started. And I told Craig when it first started up, we're going to have fun doing this. And when we stop having fun, we won't do it anymore. When it stops being fun, whatever, stops being, progressive, I guess you could say, we won't do it anymore. But it's been fun for how long? I don't see it stopping, because we enjoy, this is a chance for us to sit down and, whether you're on the show or not, we're talking to you, you're like our friends, and vice versa. And it's sharing information, it's sharing experiences. It's good. So why not? And
hey, husband.
Yeah.
We broke our record, I do believe.
Oh, God, I didn't even look at the time. It's 11 o'clock, guys. I'm sorry. It's been a good show.
I was just wondering, Sadie, is there anybody still on chat?
Yeah, Bill Marsh is on, Bob D. We got, let's see here. Who else is on here tonight? I think I saw Barbara earlier. Brandon's on.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I think it's... Oh, go ahead.
You always do that to us. When the last one we did with you was about 3 hours?
Close.
Yep, it sure was. Because you guys never know what I'm going to bring up a topic and where that topic's going to lead us. Because if y'all remember, we started talking about originally your find, and then my weird family's property, and hey, we ended up right back where the show originated, in the hobby of metal detecting and the good it can do for each and every one of us. I mean, just the emotional sanity to be able to get lost in something and enjoy it. It's not your everyday punch the time clock, oh my God, I got to take care of kids, what the hell the husband's going to want for dinner tonight. You just get out there and get lost. And for all of you detectorists out there that are listening and share your videos that Derek and I watch, I would like to give you a personal thank you, because there are those times where we can't get out and hunt. We get along great, but there are days we just don't talk to each other much because we're watching detectoring videos.
Yep.
And it's a good, safe pastime for us if it's storming out or whatever. It's not tromping to the mall or shopping, because my husband really doesn't like doing that kind of stuff.
Nope.
So, yeah, I kind of conformed and started watching detection videos. And now that has taken both of us in other directions as far as, for me, what to do with the, what do you call that stuff, honey?
Junk.
Well, fine. I get into what I can build out of the junk, and he has started researching more into the Indian artifacts, the bottle hunting, things like that. So thanks to you guys, we have a little more peace of mind. And I'm hoping that the videos that Derek puts out, I do help him video quite a bit of them, and he'll edit them or whatever. I hope you guys enjoy those as much as we enjoy yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's living for the beep. That's when you're out there metal detecting. At least for me, nothing else bothers me around me. It's just I can take my mind off of everything else in my world and put it right there into metal detecting and Relicon, whatever you want to call it. It's my sanity, because my wife will tell you I can get going in 5 million different directions, and I run myself completely ragged to the point where, heck, there's been days, and it happened a couple of times last year, Craig, where she had to hit me because I actually fell asleep talking. That's how tired I was, from doing all this other stuff. Metal detecting just takes me, and it relaxes me. It's my getaway time. My adventure, and that's the way I've always looked at it.
About it to me is it seems to go by too fast.
Yeah.
When you're out there.
And when you don't get out there, like I'll be honest with you, I haven't been able to get out even a tenth of what I've wanted to get out in the last 3 months. But it's been, life happens and everything, but I'll get right back into it. But in the meantime, I watch other people's videos. I'm on, chat or whatever, on these Facebook or whatever. I'm looking at other stuff too. Same thing as you guys do. You find that part. It's a happy place. Living for the beep. I can't think of anything else I'd rather do with my spare time at all. I used to be into guns. I used to be into, horses and cattle and this and that and the other thing, as far as working with them and raising them and driving truck and everything else. But metal detecting has always been, the happy place, so to speak.
And for me, I don't have to feed it or clean up after it.
Nope.
So that's pretty doggone good.
And I found you plenty of nice rings, haven't I? I find her nice jewelry back in the day. Not lately, though. I haven't found a gold ring in, it's been 2 years, Pauline? Something like that.
Yep.
But I found a lot of silver. But, sometimes, believe it or not, some of the oddest things I find she loves. I don't care. It could be a weird horseshoe, and she wants it. I can make something out of this. Or actually, I can weld it for her, but she knows what she wants to put together. Or it could be whatever. When we went to the Digging in Virginia event, or digging in Pennsylvania, the Horsham, Pennsylvania, we had a bunch of guys there, and they were finding everything you could think of, really, metal-wise. And they were throwing it in a pile, and Pauline says, okay, load it up in the RV. And I said, what? I said, it's like, 60 pounds of metal. She goes, yeah, but it's a horseshoe. It's a clip of this. I can put this together. So I had to load, like, I don't know, it probably was like 50 or 60 pounds of metal into our RV, but she makes stuff out of it. She has that artistic side of her. So she was happy. Everybody else laughed their ass off about it because I had to load all this stuff up. But at any rate, I guess, guys, we'll probably wrap it up for tonight. I think I've dominated all the time I can from you tonight. Yeah, or Pauline has one. I don't know. We'll have to have her on again.
Yeah.
She's being quiet.
Oh, we're not talking about my weird family next time.
Oh, no. I just thought it was a neat story. That just what goes on. How your heritage goes. It's everything. Anybody's really. I can't trace mine back that far at all. Because it goes into a different country right away. But with Pauline's, it's just, God, you guys haven't even heard the other side. Your dad's side of the family is just got all kinds of stuff going on out here in Florida. But it gives me, I don't know, at least I'm not losing my mind, Pauline. I knew I had a good spot picked. I was just surprised I got permission on it. So.
You know what? I can honestly say I'm just glad that you're thrilled with my family, unlike a lot of people who can't stand their in-laws.
No, I don't know. I've always, but me and Pauline's mom, if anything else, we got along. We were like best friends. She'd go out looking for shells on the beach, and I'd be metal detected. And that's what, we'd go, a couple of times we took off for, a whole week and got one of those fancy, whatever, kitchen, everything else in the hotel room. And that's what she'd go out there shell hunting. I'd go out metal detecting, and we hung out and talked or whatever. It was great, but I'm glad I had that kind of relationship with my in-laws too. A lot of guys don't. So, but at any rate, probably wrap it up tonight, guys. How's that sound?
Well, that's the third time you said that.
I know. I'm gonna go. Fine. See you. Bye. I don't want to do it anymore. No.
So are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. I need to get off of here. We actually need to eat dinner because we haven't even eaten yet tonight. So yeah, it's. Anyways, guys, I guess. Oh, go ahead, Craig. What's that?
My cat's looking at me funny because I haven't been talking to him. I've been talking to.
Talking to
Faith,
yeah.
I guess cat. Yeah.
Cat's getting jealous, Daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, anyways,
Wondering
we're
why
on.
it gotten into me.
Yeah, we're on every Thursday
right.
night and Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can check us out on Facebook, on Hardcore Metal Detecting Radio Facebook page, or our personal Facebook pages, doesn't matter, YouTube channels and stuff like that. But really the key to it all is get out there, keep digging, and God bless. Have a good night, everybody.